Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Board of County Commissioners meeting for April 23rd. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Again, good morning. The first thing we have on our agenda are the minutes. Gentlemen, do we have any additions or corrections?
No.
I move to approve the proceedings of the Board of County Commissioners from Montezuma County for Tuesday, April 16th, 2024 as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to accept the proceedings of the Board of Commissioners, Montezuma County, April 16th, 2024. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, planning, come on down. And being time set aside for a public hearing at this point in time for the Leaf Properties Incorporated. Kim, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Candelaria.
Here.
Commissioner Lindsay.
Here.
Commissioner Copenhaver.
Here.
Administrator Anderson.
Here.
Attorney McLaren.
Here.
And Kim Purcell, Montezuma County Clerk and Recorder. Notice is hereby given that the Montezuma County Board of County Commissioners will hold a public hearing for a review and determination regarding a proposed high-impact permit application submitted by Leaf Properties Incorporated on property located at 27078 Road North in, Dolores, Colorado, consisting of 3.78 acres more or less, located south of Road N, east of Highway 145, situated in Section 7, Township 36 North, Range 15 West, N.M.P.M. The hearing will be held Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024 at 9 a.m. in the Commissioners' Hearing Room, Montezuma County Administrative Offices, 109 West Main, Cortez, Colorado. Interested persons may attend and give input. Information may be obtained from the Planning Office online services at https://montezuma-co.smartgutcommunity.com public home. You may also contact the Planning Department at 970-565-2801 with questions. Dated this 8th day of April, 2024, Kim Purcell, Clerk, Board of County Commissioners, Montezuma County, Colorado, published in the Journal on Wednesday, April 10th, 2024.
All right, thank you, Kim. Okay, Don, would you give us an overview?
And Commissioner, I'm wondering, just given the number of people here and the number of the applicant's presentation, just for the sake of time, I'm wondering if it would make sense to give a legal overview at the onset, so both the presenters and then anybody in the public can kind of more better focus their comments on things that are going to be relevant to today's hearing.
Sure.
Okay.
That's fine. Appropriate.
So I'll go ahead and start with that. High impact permit, that's what we're evaluating today, okay? The land use code lays out what the focus of the public hearing should be. It says the public hearing will focus on submittals, planning commission recommendations, finding of fact and decision criteria as specified, and we'll talk about those in a minute, along with oral comments made at the public hearing, as well as written comments received at or prior to the public hearing. And so that's the focus of our public hearing today. Now, the findings of fact and decision criteria for a high-impact permit. These are the things you have to pay very close attention to. The first thing is the commissioners shall base their decision on whether the proposed use is, first, in conformity with the code. Okay. The second thing is that the proposed use shall not generate any significant adverse impacts on other property in the area and is consistent with the code. Now, Section 1201.2 of the Land Use Code, that's the Threshold Standards Established section, states that significant adverse impact shall be any impact that creates an increased risk to health, safety, or welfare of the citizens of the county, a significant reduction in neighboring property values, or other unfavorable or harmful consequences. Do you need me to repeat that again or come through? Okay. Now, in terms of looking at the objectives of the land use code, because certainly that's a piece in deciding whether this is going to be consistent with the code, Section 1201 of the code says that one of the major objectives of the comprehensive land use plan is to protect the rural character of the county through the enactment of development regulations appropriate for rural areas. This objective is addressed by a zoning system and a complementary high-impact commercial or industrial permitting system, which are combined in this land use code. So a couple things to consider as you're looking at conformity with the code and the significant adverse impact issue, okay? The third thing is that you have to determine for findings of fact and criteria is whether public utilities and services are available or can be made available to support the uses consistent with the proposed high-impact permit or zoning, okay? And then if the applicant fails to meet the decision criteria, you can either approve the permit with conditions or you can deny the permit. And then obviously, the validity of the permit is contingent upon continued compliance with any conditions that you put on and the overarching, I guess, pieces of the application that are submitted. So the thing has to comply with as it's presented or as you condition it. There's also a couple zoning things that I wanted to talk to you about before we get into today's hearing, okay? Objectives of zoning. This is at 3101.2, okay? And this is something to pay attention to today. Predictability concerning property rights. And it says landowners will have a zoning category that defines what their development rights are and what standards will be required when they choose to develop. Landowners may request rezoning of their property when development is proposed that meets the subdivision regulations or a commercial or industrial permit. Now, objectives of zoning also, it talks about predictability concerning property values. And its zoning designations will assist neighbors, potential buyers, and the public in recognizing what kind of development to anticipate and being able to adjust expectations and plans accordingly. So the overarching purpose of our zoning portions of our code is to create predictability. Predictability concerning property rights and predictability concerning property values. And that's something that we certainly want to pay attention to today. Now, ultimately, commercial zoning, that allows for commercial use on a property. But it doesn't in and of itself allow for one to exceed the threshold standards set forth in the land use code. And that's why this high impact permit application is before us today. Commercial zoning gives an applicant or a landowner the right to operate a commercial business on their land, but it doesn't in and of itself allow that applicant to exceed the threshold standards set forth in the code. Does that make sense? Okay. Certainly, as we receive more on the presentation and as we receive public comment, I'm happy to answer any questions or chime in as appropriate, but I think this gives us a general overview as to what we should be looking for today, and hopefully gives everybody in the audience an idea of what the commissioners are looking at, so you guys can effectively communicate and be efficient. I mean, obviously, when you get up here, you can say whatever you want to say, but the more efficient that you can be, the more pointed you can be, the more you can submit facts that are going to be relevant to these factors, the more helpful it's going to be to these gentlemen in making their decision. And that same for the applicant, that's the same idea.
Good?
We're good.
All right. With that, Don, would you go ahead and give us the overview?
Sure. And just to clarify, this application is through the petition of the Land Use Code to be heard by the Board of County Commissioners. It's for a high-impact permit for a proposed Dollar General store at the corner of N and Highway 145. The property is zoned commercial currently. It was changed roughly 20 years ago. We don't have a definitive date or time for an art studio. At least that's the general consensus of what was there and why it was changed. So currently there's the site plan on the screen. They're proposing the store, parking, detention pond and septic on the west and south west corner of the lot. The existing residence there is proposed to stay. As far as the planning and zoning, they were 6-0 to recommend it for denial. Their reasoning was in accordance with the items B and C of the land use code. They recognize the potential to generate significant adverse impacts on other property in the area, as well as concerns by agencies with public utilities and services noted in the comments from the Fire Protection District, water concerns, and the information that was presented by Planning Assistant Duncan on the findings. And that item B and C they referenced was the proposed use shall not generate any significant adverse impacts on other property in the area, and public utilities and services are available or can be made available to support uses consistent with the proposed high-impact permit.
Okay. All right. Gentlemen, I will now give you the opportunity to speak as far as the applicant.
Thank you. Thank you. How do I get the screen to roll over to my PowerPoint? There you go. There it is. Great. Okay, my name's Doug Kinsey. I'm the property owner, and I have a company. One of my companies is a development company called Leaf Properties, and we bought this land about 15 years, about 9 years ago, I'm sorry. And with the idea of doing something commercial on the property, in the very beginning, we thought we'd tear the house down and use the entire 3.7 acres, but we decided not to do it at that time. We still might, depending on what use we finally get approved, but right now we have a use that would allow us to leave the house in place, and that's the site plan that Don has already put up. We purchased it, as I said, in 2015. It's 3.78 acres, it's zoned commercial, and we bought it because of that commercial zoning and the fact that there's there's 5 CDOT lanes in the highway. And doing these net lease commercial developments around the country, the one thing that you have the most difficulty with usually is your driveway permits and getting approval from CDOT. So when we saw the turn lanes, we saw the zoning, and later on when we saw that Montezuma County had approved a commercial industrial overlay for that part of the highway, we said, well, this is a pretty good opportunity for us, so we bought the land. And we've already talked about, or the council's already talked about the commercial uses and what they're defined to allow us to do. But basically it's the sale, rental, service, and distribution of goods and provisions of services. So what we're proposing to do on this land, I think meets the code. This is the Montezuma planning map. That's the parcel. It's right at the intersection of Road N and Highway 145. Now the turn lanes, you can't really see it in this slide that well, so I took some photographs that show this is a northbound view of the intersection. And as you can see, there's 2 through-fare lanes, and then there's a decel lane on both sides and acceleration lane on both sides as well. That's a southbound view. And then with the turn lanes combined with the fact that it looked, based on this industrial overlay area, it looks as if this is the area that the county wants to focus commercial development. So if I'd been trying to get this rezoned, this would have been a good target of opportunity. Fortunately, this one already had the zoning that we were looking at. And based on this map, that's a public record, it looks like this is where the county wants commercial development. So we kind of thought it was a kind of a shoe-in in terms of getting approved. As a personal property owner, I was a little bit, I guess, disappointed, and as a developer, I was a little bit surprised that we didn't get the recommendation for approval. But in any event, after looking back at some of the comments, we understand what everybody's saying, and we understand their concerns, and we think we can address all of those. And we'll get into that a little bit later on. But anyway, this commercial zoning overlay, I highlighted this to have a little bit of fun. It says that the overlay provides designated areas for commercial, light industrial, heavy industrial uses by providing incentives to developers who wish to propose commercial and/or industrial activities. So I haven't heard about the incentives yet. If you guys are offering a gold watch or a parade, I'm willing to forego those if we can get the approval here today. Anyway, that's an attempt at little humor, very little, obviously. But there was one other thing that kind of caused us later on to believe that a Dollar General would be a good use for this piece of land. And that was the approval of the Dollar General on the south parcel, south side of town, I'm sorry. And if you look at the reasons for it being approved, it proposed use is in conformity with the code. It shall not generate any significant adverse impacts on other property in the area. Public utilities and services are available or can be made available to support the consistent with proposed zoning. So we said, well, this is a use that works on our piece of property too. In fact, this property wasn't zoned commercial at the time. I think the zoning and the subdivision was approved at the same time as the high impact permit. And they in fact wound up putting this store on less than 3 acres of land, if I remember correctly. In any event, that just led us to believe even further that a Dollar General would be something we could get approved on this piece of land. This high impact permit application has already been gone through this morning, so I won't get into that. But when we did submit for the permit approval, it was denied, as Don mentioned a moment ago. Excuse me. And the reason for the public wanted it denied, primarily, after going back and listening to the video, looking at the video, most of the objection had to do with who the retailer was, and it was Dollar General. They didn't want a Dollar General retail store in the area. Then came traffic and safety, adequacy of utilities, lighting, the fact that it was not consistent with the rural character of the community, a lot of those. And the commission sort of mirrored all of that in their comments when they made the vote: traffic and safety, adequacy of water, inconsistent with the rural character, adequacy of utilities, etc. So we're going to try to address these today. The objections to the specific Dollar General retailer, even Commissioner, I forgot his name all of a sudden, I apologize, but one of the commissioners mentioned that the Planning Commission had to consider this as it related to the code and not necessarily who the retailer was going to be that came in there. In other words, if the use was right and we met all the other criteria that we had to meet to get the approval. Traffic and safety, we have hired the experts to look into that. In fact, we'd already hired them when we were at the meeting last time. We just didn't have all the results. We have them now, and we'll be giving those to you for your consideration a little bit later on. So we have a traffic study from Kimley Horn. We have a fire study from a fire safety engineer, and he and I have met with the fire chief and have discussed what options or what solutions we have available to us there. We have a photometric plan from a lighting consultant that gives the lighting intensity as you move out away from the lights, and it shows actually that there's no light going on to any of the neighboring properties, which was one of the concerns that night. Commissioner Lynch, in any event, he just tried to keep people focused on the use and not who the retailer would be. And one of the other things that I think I mentioned a moment ago, was that the use or the business was not consistent with the rural character of the neighborhood or the area. And I don't know if that had to do with the use itself, the retailer, or the building that had been approved down south of town. But we can do a lot of things with how buildings look to try to be consistent with the rural character of a neighborhood or of an area. This is a building that we designed in Virginia, tried to make it look like a horse barn. This is one that we did down in Sedona. And then this is a country store that was built down in Florida, which I thought might be a pretty good look for this area, but maybe not. You know, it's like my granddad said, don't worry about the mules, boys, just load the wagons. You know, if we know what we need to try to do, we can do that with our architects and with our planners. This is one we built in Flagstaff 3 or 4 years ago, and they loved it. They still use this as an example when other people are trying to get things approved in that particular area. But that's all subjective. I mean, that's why architects do what they do, and I do what I do. They can design things to make them look the way people would like them to look. And we could even make this thing, I was driving up the highway the other day, And looking at the big hay barn on the left-hand side of the highway, you could create a building that was sort of similar in mass and scale and color, almost match that right and left side so that there was some symmetry and consistency in the colors. So as you came up the highway, it looked like basically another barn sitting on the other side of the road if we wanted to. Some of the other businesses in the area, this is the rock shop that's down just about a mile south of the property. These two are the storage facility, which is just a little bit north of the rock shop. And of course, this one is a little bit further north on Road P, I believe it is, the next intersection. These even go further north. This is up on the top of the hills, everybody probably knows. This was just approved a couple years ago, probably just opened maybe a month or two ago. The Love's truck stop down to the south, another commercial property. And I might add, when you come to utility availability, the same fire line that runs by our property runs down south and by the mobile, not the mobile home, but by the RV park, and then by the lumberyard or builder supply, lumberyard, truss plant. And, we're a commercial use just like these are. I think our use is far less intense than this. And in talking to Mr. Wilkerson, the fire chief, our use is a far lower fire danger than this particular one is. But in any event, I think we can make the building fit the character of the community if it's the look of the building that's a concern. If it's the retailer, I think that's what was being said earlier. It's more about the use and not the user, I think. This is the Dollar General. It's built down south of town. And I have to agree, if people think that's ugly, so do I. In any event, we've met with the county Roads and Bridges Department. They had some concerns about the design of our entry. We widened it so that there'd be no delays by any trucks entering the property, and so that the trucks did not have to swing wide into the oncoming traffic to make the turn. And we made it so that the trucks could make the turn and not have to swing into the exit lane as the cars were exiting the property. So the truck actually can turn off of 145, drive up and turn directly into the store without having to stop and delay traffic, causing someone to try to swing around them, or without having to wait for traffic to exit so that they force the same thing to happen. They can actually turn in and immediately turn right and go right into the property. We have a copy of this permit for you guys that I'll give to you in just a minute. And then we also already have our CDOT driveway permit from CDOT. We provided them with the traffic counts they needed and the traffic study that they wanted. And after analyzing the movements, the turns, the amount of traffic, they had no issues with safety. And in fact, I got this driveway permit faster than any permit I've ever gotten. So we have that here for your consideration as well. So we believe that the project addresses or adheres to the Montezuma County Land Use Code, and we believe that we have the way to meet all the threshold expectations in the high application permit. But I'd like to start, before we get into the traffic and the fire and the lighting, I'd like to have Andrew Peters, who's an attorney with Otten Johnson, Robinson, Neff, and Raganetti, kind of take us through the land use code, how we believe our project meets that code, and how we believe we're meeting all the threshold requirements in the high permit application. So, Andy.
I think I need to plug this in for myself over here, so 1 second.
Should I go ahead and give them the traffic permits?
We can make that material available for the traffic permits.
The hard copies.
Okay. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Andy Peters. And as Mr. Kinsey said, I am a land use attorney at Otten Johnson. Mr. Kinsey gave you an overview of the project, of his intentions for the site. My focus today is just a little bit narrower and more in line with what Mr. McLaren was explaining about the purview of the board's review of this application. So I'm going to focus a little bit more narrowly on the consistency or the compliance with that high impact review criteria and why we believe, with the additional information that Mr. Kinsey has put together in the time since the Planning Commission meeting and the Planning Commission recommendation, why this does in fact meet the criteria for approval. But first, just a little bit of background on this high impact review. So the reason we're here in the first instance, and Mr. McLaren touched on this, is because of the threshold standards in the code. So back in the 1990s, the comprehensive plan had recommended creating a high impact review for areas of the county, primarily ones that were unzoned, I believe. But at any rate, there was an idea of creating zoning classifications for properties, so permitted uses on properties, and then if they went past certain thresholds, that the high impact review would apply. So I believe that everybody here agrees that the reason we're on high impact review is because this use will have more than 15 round trip vehicle trips per day. So that's a pretty low threshold. I mean, I've got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I might take 15 trips a day just between daycare and other things. So we're in a place of saying we're in high impact review and not just an administrative review of this use because of that greater than 15 trips a day. So of course, now the question is, how can that impact, that greater than the threshold standard, be mitigated? So that's what got us into this place of this review, and now the question is, can that be mitigated? And certainly, can we satisfy the other approval criteria too? But for the reasons that I'm going to discuss, I absolutely think that the applicant can do that, and that approval is appropriate here. So again, just a bit more background on the property, because your comprehensive plan, again, says right in the outset that land use and zoning are a delicate balance of property rights and property values and predictability, exactly as Mr. McLaren was telling you. So there's the property rights of the owner on the one hand, there's the property rights of people who live in the area on the other. They have an expectation regarding their property values. That's absolutely the balance that land use strikes, and that's what we're trying to do with zoning. But that predictability is important. So, we're here today not asking for a rezoning of a particular piece of property, but we're talking about a piece of property that is commercially zoned already. That gives you some sense of what the county's intentions were, and it might have been 20 years ago that they expressed those intentions, but it is commercial zoning today. And that commercial zoning allows a wide range of uses on this property, among them retail sales. And I think everybody agrees that this is a retail sales use, so this is a permitted use within the commercial zoning district. That was the intention to allow when they zoned this property, or the BOCC zoned this property back 20 years ago. And certainly there might have been a particular use contemplated at that time, but this wasn't zoned as a PUD that said a specific use or a specific user. It was zoned as commercial, which allows for, again, a range of uses on this property, retail sales being one of them. And then, as Mr. Kinsey noted, this is also in a commercial overlay area. And I think that the commercial overlay area is just as important for what it is as for what it isn't. So Mr. Kinsey talked to you about, well, there are certain corridors that the county has identified as trying to concentrate that commercial growth. So one of them being Highway 145 coming up from Cortez all the way up, I believe, to Highway P. But the other goal in having the overlay, I think the clear purpose of that is to then confine other areas of the county and protect them against development. So most of the county, the vast majority of the county, is not within a commercial overlay. And I think we'd be having a very different conversation here today if we were trying to propose something outside that overlay. But the county has made a considered decision to say, this is where we want commercial growth to go. We want it on this corridor, or we want industrial growth to go on these corridors, so that we can preserve other areas of the county. So again, in terms of the property rights, the expectations, both from the county, from the landowner, from surrounding property owners, these corridors where we have the commercial overlay, the expectation is that these are going to develop. And whether it develops with a Dollar General or it develops with something else, the goal that the county has set is to develop those corridors. So then let's just talk about the this was the conformity, excuse me, I should have led with, this is conformity with the code. So, again, we're proposing uses in conformity with the code, in conformity with the commercial overlay. So satisfies that approval criterion. Now, the proposed use shall not generate any significant adverse impacts on the property in the area and is consistent with the code. So this is a limited scale commercial development. It's a nearly 4-acre site. This is going to use just 1.2 acres of that site. So it's a home or a house rather to the east, and then there's Highway 145 to the west and to the north that provides a little bit more buffering in addition to the 1.2 acres on the site. And as you heard from Mr. Kinsey say too, there's already infrastructure, traffic infrastructure in place. This is an ideal location to have additional vehicle trips because there is that infrastructure there. Again, if we were talking about a different intersection, there might be some concerns, but CDOT has confirmed that the number of trips generated here are fine. The county's road and bridges, in issuing the permit, has confirmed that the number of trips here are fine. And then we have additional information. This is where we went out and got some more information because we heard the concerns at the Planning Commission about, are there safety concerns at this intersection? Can it handle the number of trips that this is going to generate? So I believe we've made available, or at least we sent to Mr. Hanley, the Kimley Horn traffic engineering report that has all the vehicle trip counts, all the assessments of the A-cell, D-cell lanes, the turn lanes, the infrastructure capacity. And the conclusion there is exactly the same conclusion that Road and Bridges reached, that CDOT reached, that this intersection has the capacity to serve this use. And looking back too, so they did a study, the 5 years back of, crash data at this intersection too, and only found one crash, and it was a one vehicle crash at this intersection. So again, in terms of the concerns about this, the intersection is functioning at a level of service I think a lot of governments would be really happy to see for an intersection like this one. And that's before the use, and it's after the use with the additional trips generated. So again, that intersection allows for the mitigation of those adverse impacts. Now, in addition to that, your code requires you to collect a road impact fee in connection with high impact permits. So it contemplates I think it's a little bit more, it's about 20 a square foot. So a fairly substantial, it's thousands of dollars for a project like this to offset road impacts too. So to create additional road infrastructure when you have commercial uses that come in or industrial uses that come in. And might create impacts on roads. So you're going to have that too. That's additional help with the mitigation. If the county wants to use that here, it can. If it wants to use it somewhere else, it also can. But the code requires that, again, recognizing that uses have impacts that need to be offset. Then just a couple other things. I don't think there were all too many concerns, at least in my review of the Planning Commission video regarding noise and lighting. But nevertheless, this is not a 24/7, 7 days a week use. This is 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then all the lighting on this site, we have a photometric plan now that shows no offset impact or off-site impacts from the lighting. So you can see those, the increase in the lumens off-site on the photometric plan. All of this is going to be downcast. It's going to be limited to the site. So we're not talking about noise or glare or dust or that kind of thing going off-site. So no adverse impacts there. And then finally, on the public utilities, so no concern about water. There's no concern about sewer. The septic system, commercial septic system, can be made available to this site. Electric is available here. And then fire. So you saw Mr. Hanley post that email correspondence from Chief Wilkinson about the ability to serve this property with fire services. So that was the email that he'd sent in prior to Planning Commission. Mr. Kinsey and his fire consultant met with Chief Wilkinson and talked through options to address fire concerns for this site. And so we have, and I believe we sent Mr. Hanley this morning, an additional email from Chief Wilkinson where he said that he'd agreed that we have now mitigation measures to address those concerns. So those, and I don't want to, I have not seen, okay, have you sent that?
Did send it.
Okay.
It was just this morning though, just before the meeting, yeah.
Yeah, they had met with, obviously it's not a whole lot of time between the Planning Commission and BOCC, but the concern was about the ability to serve this property because there's only a 3-inch line that goes out there. And in the conversation with the fire consultant and with Chief Wilkinson, they came to the conclusion that if you put a 10,000 gallon cistern out here with a dry hydrant and then a more than, or at least above code compliant alarm system that connects back to the fire protection district to allow for service, that would mitigate those concerns. And we can certainly make that email available up here on the screen if you'd like to see that. But he did have real concerns, and that's why we went out there and chatted with him about it and wanted to address those. Because again, we recognize that there were legitimate concerns raised before Planning Commission, and that if we were to have any hope of coming in here and convincing you all that we needed to address those concerns, and fire was chief among those. So that proposed mitigation plan seems to be, or is satisfactory to the chief. And again, we can put that email up so you can see it yourselves. But with that in mind, I think that we have then addressed the concerns that were raised, the concerns that led to that recommendation of denial on criterion B and C at the Planning Commission. So you've addressed the traffic with that additional information or engineering information, which has been shared with planning staff. We expect high levels of service post-project. As I said, CDOT and the county have already approved access, that widened access that Mr. Kinsey was talking about. We have a fire engineering report that we had submitted to planning staff yesterday as well, and that conclusion that the alternatives are going to be sufficient. And then with respect to aesthetics, I mean, you saw Mr. Kinsey saying, we can work with the county on the building elevations. The lighting plan shows that no offsite impacts. So again, we recognize there were concerns and real concerns, but the hope is, and the goal is to say, we heard you, we addressed those concerns, and we'd like to move forward with this project with your approval.
I have just a quick question on the legal piece, unless
Go
you want
ahead.
to move forward. So you discussed the significant adverse impact issue a little bit. Maybe, and I guess I'll present this to either one of you to answer. Certainly our code talks about significant adverse impacts being those that would reduce property values in the area. I didn't see anything in the presentation about that. Would you like to speak to that at all? Would either of you like to speak to that issue and why you think that one way or the other, whether it's going to reduce property values in the area or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm happy to say that, there's already commercial zoning on the property, so there's the idea that any number of uses, commercial uses, could be there. So the expectation for the last 20 years since that zoning has been in place is that commercial is a possibility on that site. The industrial overlay, the commercial industrial overlay also gives more predictability to surrounding landowners to say, this is an area that could develop. And then, in terms of considerations that could impact property values, I absolutely could think that having a fire risk out there, or having lights, just shining into your house, or having traffic that's not mitigated in a particular way, that those things could impact property values. But, when I talk about we're addressing all of those adverse impacts, ultimately those are the things that affect property values. I guess I can't change the fact that if folks think that a Dollar General is inappropriate at this location, that we can fix that part of it. But at least in terms of, there was a plan for a commercial use at this intersection, that the county has directed growth and development toward this intersection. So when that growth and development arrives, I think that that's baked into property values already, to say we have that expectation that something could be here, and that's part of the property value.
I would add to that, as a developer, most people know that commercial property is worth more than residential or agricultural property. I own all of them. And the fact that this is already commercial, in some respects, adds some value maybe to the neighboring owners, because when I go to get something rezoned, if I'm trying to rezone something next to a commercial parcel, it's a lot easier to get it rezoned. I would also suggest that when this industrial and commercial overlay was put in, that all the property owners within that overlay has the potential for increase in their property values if it develops as the county envisioned it at the time. It's just a matter of, highest and best use and the return that you get for the dollar spent on the property. So, property that's zoned commercial is worth more. The zone suggests that the commission would consider and approve commercial rezones in those areas. So just the fact that the areas developing commercially suggests that more rezones to commercial in the future would be more likely. That's the way I would look at it as a developer.
I was just going to ask if you have the traffic
Oh,
engineer
yes.
on Zoom. We hadn't heard from them yet, so I was just going to see if they're still there and available
Oh, yeah.
to provide that additional
Let
information.
me, do I give the reports to you or hand them directly to the commission? Okay.
I think he's also, were you asking Commissioner Candelaria if we have the traffic engineer available?
Correct.
Yes.
That wanted to make his statements.
Yeah.
This is the traffic permit from the state of Colorado. I mean, not traffic permit, the driveway
Oh.
permit.
Yeah.
It's the driveway permit that we got from the county.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the Kimley Horn traffic study that we're
Okay.
about to go through right now.
Okay,
So those, we were asked to bring those in hard copy, so that's
perfect.
And we received those documents yesterday. The county did.
And I'm not sure that I have control over your Zoom, but I did want to show you that letter from, or the email from Chief Wilkinson as well, so I have that available for you. So I thought, oh, you know what? At least I thought I did. Do you have that on yours?
I'm sorry.
It's taking a while for my Outlook to update.
I do my glasses. There they are. No, I haven't updated this. I have it on my phone.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, it should be in your inbox too. Let's see. What's the? I've got it here, so I can forward it from my phone. Here it is. So what's the? Oh. Anderson. That. That look right? Yes. Okay.
You can email that to you?
Yep. I think I've got it here, so it should be on its way to you.
And that's the email.
Do you still need connectivity, or can I switch it back to
Oh,
one?
you can switch it back. I'm sorry. Thanks. I end up walking home with people's pens all the time, sticking in my pocket.
And then I'm on from the Zoom. Can anyone hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Okay, yep. Jeff Plank, the traffic engineer.
Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready, Jeff. If you want to speak to any of the concerns raised here, please feel free.
Yes, happy to do so. So I'm Jeff Plank from Kimley Horn, and I helped prepare the traffic impact study. So we prepared this study letter, and it was dated April 9th, 2024, to address the public concerns of safety. And so this letter included a intersection operational analysis, safety analysis, site distance analysis, and a turn lane evaluation, CDOT turn lane evaluation. So the County Road N and State Highway 145 intersection and the project access are both expected to operate with level service B or better with the development of this project. And so that indicates a significant reserved and additional capacity at this intersection because level service C, D, and E after that category are actually still acceptable. We also collected crash data at this intersection. And in the last 6 years, there's only been one vehicle crash. This crash occurred at nighttime, and it involved property damage only with a fence. There was no injury or fatality with this crash. So only one crash in the last 6 years is less than 0.2 of a crash per year, well below the industry standard. A site distance evaluation was also provided at this control intersection. It's determined that appropriate site distance are provided at this intersection to allow turning movements from the side street of County Road N. We also provided a turn lane evaluation at this intersection, and all of the possible turn lanes are already implemented based on CDOT standards. This includes 2 right turn deceleration lanes, 2 left turn deceleration lanes, and 2 right turn acceleration lanes. From the side street, County Road N, there's only today approximately 700 vehicles per day on this east leg of this intersection, so that does not warrant the need for widening or providing designated turn lanes on that approach. The project is expected to generate approximately 32 trips during the morning peak hour and 71 trips during the afternoon peak hour. To get a frame of reference from that, that's about 1 trip every 2 minutes in the morning, slightly more than 1 trip every minute in the afternoon peak hour. And a little bit more context from that, a trip in and a trip out is 2 trips. So in the afternoon peak hour, what's actually happening is you have 1 trip entering in 1 minute, 1 trip leaving in the next minute, and so on. That kind of pattern continues. So relatively low trip generator, as I mentioned previously. That intersection is expected to operate at level service B or better. And then there was also some concerns with the speed limit along State Highway 145. And so we can certainly entertain those conversations with CDOT to request a speed study. CDOT's procedures and methodology are to be reactive with speed limits. And so, for example, they will require a development to go in first before they provide a speed study. So they're never proactive with a speed limit change, it's always reactive. And so that kind of summarizes our safety evaluation from the public concern, and I'm happy to answer any specific questions.
So, Mr. Plank, I do have a question. As we're looking at the map sitting on here, and I'll be the first one to tell you why I frequent that road pretty much daily. You can see the shadows of the trees on County Road N. In the wintertime, that road there ices up, or if there's been a snowstorm, there's a crown on N Road right there, and it's approximately 800, 900 feet. I'm not 100% sure on that, but those trees create a kind of an ice spot, if you will. So the right-hand turn lane coming out of the establishment, it would be very hard to gain traction right there, and I'm talking only for the wintertime, after a snow event, an ice event. Is there any conversation that you guys have had about how you could create mitigation measures for that?
So that's a private ownership to the east there. So you would have to entertain discussions with that landowner to
I'm the landowner.
Mr. Kinsey, you're the landowner. I guess I'll direct that question to you. And you can obviously see the shadows that I'm talking about. And if you haven't been there in the wintertime, or if you have, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So that's kind of a safety concern for me. I know that, it looks like the address of these other concerns have been met, but it's a simple question, and I don't know if it was brought up or not through the wintertime functions of N Road.
Well, I've been there every winter since 2015. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's caused by the shade of the trees. Dollar General will have to enter into a contract for snow removal and ice mediation for the project. We could also just have them make sure that that part of the road is scraped and salted and cleared as well. I guess the extreme answer is you have me cut the trees.
Well, I don't. I mean, I love trees too.
I love
don't
trees.
necessarily, I'm just asking if there was any
I would really hate to cut
question
them.
of salting, sanding,
Yeah.
or any
I think
conversation.
I think we could build that into the maintenance contract with Dollar General. I can't speak for them. They're just the tenant. Only my lease controls my control over them. But they're more concerned about the safety of their customers than anybody, I think. So we could certainly get them to deal with that.
So I'm going to ask the public. This conversation is between us right now. If you guys would keep your comments until we have public comment, I would really appreciate it, because it is disrupting for us. So if you can whisper if you have to talk, or keep your comments to yourself at this point in time, please. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
I could say that if Dollar General weren't willing to commit to it, I would. So
The implication being that, sorry about If you wanted to condition approval on a requirement that, you know, snow and ice removal be conducted on that stretch of road, or in front of the neighboring property there, you know, that's something that we can accomplish. So again, the code allows you to issue an approval with conditions to address adverse impacts you're concerned about. So if that's one of those things, you know, either way, we can make that happen. So it could be a condition of approval.
Okay. Commissioners, do we have anybody else online that we need to address?
No, I have, Martin Gresho is our fire consultant, and he just sent me a note, said he's in a committee meeting, N.M.P.M, what's that, National Fire Protection Association? And he might be able to break out, if I can kind of get the questions, he could address you directly. But I can tell you, before we get into that I have met with Fire Chief Wilkerson 3 times now, and Mr. Gresho, the Fire Chief, and I met together on the site once. And, you know, I think that, I mean, obviously, Mr. Gresho speaks the fire language, and so did the Fire Chief. They discussed all the options that could be made available to address the concerns there. And Mr. Gresho recommended a 10,000-gallon cistern or storage tank, and the Fire Chief agreed and approved that concept. So we think we've addressed the fire concerns based on the conversations between my professional and in the, I should probably give you guys the fire.
Travis, can you bring up that email, please?
I'll touch on the high points of that study, but he's looked at all the considerations. And, you know, just speaking as a landowner, this may not have any relevance legally or anything, but basically this store would have the same services that are available at the other Dollar General store. It doesn't have sprinklers, doesn't have, I think Mr. Wilkerson said they had the same size water lines in front of them. And even the Love's truck stop doesn't have fire suppression. It does have a storage cistern like we're proposing here. If I could just go on just a little bit. Is Jeff still on? Jeff, are you there?
I am.
I've got a couple of your tables up here. I'm going to try if I can follow the line again. Just so you can. There's the traffic generation that's being generated by the dollar store itself. You might just speak as to how those numbers are derived. And I think you were talking about this just a little bit a moment ago in terms of trips in and out per day and what kind of, you know, delay or concerns there might or lack of concerns there might be with this. Can you see that, Jeff? It's your table 1, Jeff, in your study. Is he still with us? In any event, this table shows the daily traffic that would be generated by the dollar store itself. I think you heard Jeff talking about the level of service being A, B, C, D, or E. This is either a level A or a level B service, and it shows you the northbound left, eastbound approach, westbound, southbound. We had the counts done on both roads from all directions, and that's how they came up with these numbers. He talks about what warrants left turn lanes on the highway, what warrants a right turn lane, what warrants right turn acceleration lanes, and it gives the number of vehicles per hour that you have to have those lanes. The good news is all the turn lanes are already on the highway. And one interesting thing is, you know, the traffic counts show that this is Highway 145. It shows that the left turn deceleration lane is warranted. It shows that the right turn deceleration lane is warranted. But it shows that the acceleration lane off of road in onto the highway based on the number of trips is not warranted. So that's kind of a win for us on road in. We get to just come to the intersection. Hopefully everybody's still looking left, but you can go right into that acceleration lane and just keep on going up the highway. Okay. So in any event, he talked about his sight distances, the one crash, and in his summary, when you guys read that report, you'll see that he talks about the general safety of the intersection and the fact that it can accommodate even more traffic than it has today. Okay? And then, as I mentioned, Martin's not responded back to me yet. He's in the meeting with, I think they're writing national codes right now. So, in any event, he produced or provided the study I just handed you. And basically, the scope of his work was to perform a site suitability review, confirm fire prevention basics and code compliance with the proposed design, address concerns expressed by the fire chief and the Cortez Fire Protection District, and then his objective was to recommend acceptable solutions for a path forward. One thing on the proposed building description, I just highlighted the area in the IBB, or per the IBC codes, it's considered a non-combustible building. That doesn't mean you can't have a fire. And I think there's some fire chiefs on the commission, but in any event, it's a building that's less likely. It wouldn't have as many fire risks as, say, the builder supply down to the south, or maybe even the truss plant. So anyway, the suggestion was to provide a 10,000-gallon cistern and to utilize the fire department's existing water shuttle, automatic fire shuttle and automatic aid protocols, and then to utilize the new 10,000-gallon cistern as a fire department water source available for the fire department and to use on the, should there be an incident on this site. But Fire Chief Wilkerson asked, would we be willing to allow the fire department to use that cistern should they have an issue somewhere else? And I quickly said, sure, we would do that. Now, if we put it on the parcel that's outlined on the site plan that's considered Dollar General's, that's controlled by their lease. If they didn't want it on that parcel, I've got land around it. We can place the cistern so that I control the access, and that way Fire Chief Wilkerson can access the water should there be an issue with a fire somewhere else on the street. So we're willing to do that. And in any event, his recommendation, that was his recommendation. We looked at other things, like extending fire lines, 6-inch fire lines. We could put in a fire hydrant on that 3-inch line that's out front, but I don't think the water pressure would drive it. I think we did a fire flow test on that. It had 115 gallons per minute, I think, with 20 PSI, if I remember the numbers correctly. So in any event, we could put it out there, but it really would just be something that they could use for flushing and that sort of thing. It wouldn't really fight a fire. So they thought, both the fire chief and our consultant thought that the cistern would be the best way to go. And I think that's the way what happened with the Love's truck stop, is there was a storage tank put up there as well. They don't have sprinklers either. And then, real quickly, I know this is dragging on. This is the photometric study that we had done. Hopefully you can read that. If not, I have the 24 by 36 size here so that you can see it. But basically, what it shows is, let me see your cursor. This bottom line right here on the south side of the property, it shows you how many lumens that particular portion of ground gets when it's nighttime and the lights are on. And you can see that that very bottom line is 0.0.0 all the way across. The line up above on the very southwest corner has a 0.1 lumen. Now lumen, I tried to figure out the best way to describe this, but if you look it up, it's basically the light that a candle gives off. So 0.1 lumen is very little light that's hitting that part of the property. So there's nothing going on to the neighboring property to the south. There's a little bit going to the east, but that's my property. And there's a little bit going to the north, but that's my property too. So I don't have any issues with that. So I think the concern that there will be light overflowing onto other people's properties has been addressed here. And even if it's not, if it's not to satisfaction of everybody, we can make it do what we need to do. We've done building stores in nightlight jurisdictions before. In fact, we put something in Flagstaff where, the observatory there requires you to have very dim lights. So we can spec the lights to meet whatever requirements the county might put on us.
Okay, do you have anything else to add, Don? All right, commissioners, do you have any questions at this point in time?
I don't right now.
Okay, well, with that, then we will open this application up for public comment. Those wishing to speak for or against this application, please come forward to the podium, state your name and address for the record prior to providing your comment, and you may address the board. You have 3 minutes.
We got a new clock.
We're going to bring up a
We got a
timer.
new clock, yeah.
Hopefully it's a slow one.
And it has an alarm on it, sounds like a ship coming into port, so don't be surprised when you hear this.
So at the end of 30 minutes, we will then reduce the time to 2 minutes. So with that, we are going to go ahead.
Showtime. My name is Pete Montano. I live at 28593 County Road N. Been at that address since 1983. Last week, I was as a business owner, I was always concerned with business flow. We always took care of that. So I went to the Family Dollar up in Dolores, and I talked with the manager, Darcy, and asked her what is her approximate daily sales. And she said, well, it's about around 250. Then she said, well, hang on. So she hit on some keys on there. She said, well, yesterday, which is a week ago today, they had 262 sales, people coming in. And some of those are pedestrians. From there, I went to the Dollar Tree down here on Sligo, talked to the manager, Becky, and Becky said their daily sales are around 800 to 1,000 with some pedestrian traffic. Then I went to the Dollar General, which is down on County Road G, of which they presented a picture of, and I talked with the manager, Kyle. Now that site fits what we're looking at N and 145. There's no pedestrian traffic, but at that site, there's traffic lights, turn lanes, islands, everything they need, and their daily sales is around 300. And then again, he pulled out his little device as well. Actually, yesterday we had 303. So we're looking at 303 vehicles that, well, let's say that they only had half that many. It was only 150 vehicles that came in today because there were 2 purchases out of each vehicle. That is high impact for a little road like County Road N. That's narrow, has plenty of traffic, and the majority of the traffic coming out of N is turning left onto 145, coming into Cortez. But they have all that in there, and I'm sure that Leaf Properties is going to want to have sales that match the Dollar General at south of town at over 300 sales to maintain their business. If it was my business, that's what I would want. And I know how traffic flow is as customers walk in the door. So I'm asking the commissioners, with these numbers of 300 vehicles going into the Dollar General down on County Road G, 800 to 1,000 at the Dollar Tree on Sligo, over 250 a day at the Family Dollar in Dolores. Those are high impact numbers for that site on N and 145. And I ask the commissioners to please affirm the Planning and Zoning Commission vote to deny this permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
All right, I'm going to try to talk faster. You have official timer on. My name is Corelia Varek. I reside at 13449 Road 29, Dolores. I just gave the commissioners copies of 434 signatures collected in March in opposition to the proposed development, as well as a map of the adjacent wetlands to the parcel in question. I'm opposed to this proposed Dollar General for many reasons, but using the county land use code, I'll keep it succinct as follows. So, number one, just to echo County Attorney McLaren, pay attention to your Chapter 1, Section 1, 1201, under General, your very first sentence. That's your job as commissioners to uphold and support. Number 2, Chapter 2, Section 1, 1201, 2A, states the code's regulatory purpose is to protect and strengthen the established industries of agriculture, commerce, industry, tourism, recreation, and to protect property values. So a couple questions. What will the presence of this store do to the values of the neighboring parcels? In fact, a 2022 study by Clemson University found that the presence of a nearby dollar store diminished, decreased, brought down property values by 16 to 21%. Dollar store chains often increased costs and reduced tax revenues for local governments. Number 2, when were these traffic studies conducted? I haven't heard anyone consider what the traffic increase does in this county during tourist season, summer and fall. So think about that. We're thinking if these studies were conducted in the fall, winter, decreased traffic. Number 3, further the county land use code chapter 2, section 1, 1201, 2F states the final reason for permit regulations is to protect the rural character and visual and county aesthetic resources of the county, to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the people of county and state of Colorado. At the risk of being redundant, this plan just does not fit any of the above code stated values. Especially regarding safety, explain to us how adding more traffic on a skinny county road adjacent to a busy state highway with minimal control devices is going to be safely achieved. I use Road N and 145 often, and I have had to back up at least 50 yards to allow a hay truck coming from the north to get onto N. So consider these big Family Dollar trucks turning in and out. How will Montezuma County address safety in our rural neighborhood with a drastically reduced sheriff's budget? 4, in respect to Leaf Properties, Inc.'s application on page 4, item 7.3 regarding their mitigation plans. Where are their plans to mitigate for the impact of that adjacent wetland that you have a map of beyond a retention pond? And finally, I have a question for Attorney Peters. He stated the only reason for the high impact was because of the greater than 15 car trips. So I want a clarification. Is this being subdivided to a 1.2 and 2.6, or is it all being looked at as one tax lot? Thank you.
Thank you. And I will give you the time to address the questions after public comment. So just write them down, and I'll give you the opportunity to address at that time.
Thank you.
Next, thank you.
My name is Lori Ward. I live at 28177 Road N. I object to the approval of this high-impact permit application for this Dollar General based upon generation of significant adverse impacts as outlined in the Montezuma Land Use Code. Already spoken about Pete has already discussed the threshold of 15 vehicle round trips. We see that it's going to be more than that. Corelia just talked about the Clemson University study that talked about correlated a presence of a dollar store with a decrease of property values of 16 to 21%. In addition, in that study, there's interest in that the finding of for every additional dollar store in a census tract, the expected number of total crimes increases by 83%. Violent crimes by 84%, property crimes by 84%, and public order crimes by 79%. Based upon data and studies, a Dollar General at this location will degrade public safety and property values for me and my neighbors. And you're welcome to my copy of the study. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning. My name is Laura Bauer. I live at 27325 Road M, and I'm here to speak in opposition to the granting of a high-impact development permit for the proposed location. I won't reiterate a lot of what was said. However, what I would like to point out is that all the conversation seems to be focused around Highway 145. It has a commercial overlay, an industrial overlay, but the address of this application is Road N. It's not Highway 145. Traffic studies on 145, but we need the traffic studies on Road N. That is a narrow road. It was not originally constructed for the purpose of high commercial development. Also, I would like to point out that, as Corellia mentioned, standard number 18, though this property is not in a floodplain, this site is part of a designated wetland. The Holbein property directly to the south is in the Palestrine Emergent Wetland. My concern is that any development on this site should be required to conduct an environmental impact study. I would ask if, is it possible to pull up the map that was in the application packet that shows the surrounding properties? My point is that even though there is a commercial overlay along Highway 145, the surrounding properties that were shown on the map in the application packet that I reviewed shows that all those properties are zoned AR, Ag Residential. So I do not believe that this does fit or meet the character of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next.
My name is Cassandra Story. I live at 27203 Road N. My daughter's address is 27175 Road N. And I have 3 questions. One is rather important. Has anybody done a study to make sure how the adjudicated water that goes through that property, how that's going to be affected? There's plenty of people that depend on that water. Number 2, what consideration is there for the heritage property right across from that driveway? I believe it was made heritage property by probably the Apple or the Tree Commission. And number 3, are they going to reimburse those of us that live right around there for the loss of our property value? And that's basically my questions.
All right, next.
Hi, my name is Emiko South. I live at 7127 Road 25.4, even though I don't live in the general area. I am opposed to this. He brought up that the Dollar General South and the Loves was recently put in, but that was in an area that was already established commercial around the whole area, not in a residential agricultural, which most of the neighborhood is. The other part I just wanted to say was that we're not saying that he cannot conduct a commercial business, just one that's compatible to the area, like the small sign business that was there previously. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name's Melanie McDonald, 26763 Road M. There's been a lot of talk about commercial/industrial. That's false. It's a commercial overlay, right, Don? Is it industrial overlay?
If I can keep your comments, you're talking to us, the
I
public
was
is out
asking
there.
him if it's a
We
commercial.
will give him the opportunity
It's commercial
to
overlay.
address
It's
it
not
in a
commercial
minute.
industrial. There's an industrial area that's south of this. And he had talked in the P&Z about his right of use. Nobody's questioning his right of use as a commercial. He's asking for high impact. I don't think it's warranted. This is a tiny little property. He keeps using these examples of larger parcels or Loves. These are on considerably larger parcels that would fit this. He's got a residential home that he's wanting to keep on this and use it as not commercial, high impact.
Okay.
So I hope you take that into consideration as well.
All right, thank you. Did you get that question, sir? Okay. All right, next.
My name is Jean Becker. I live at 1200 Merritt Way in Dolores.
And I live about a half mile from the dollar store across the river from the dollar store in Dolores. And so I'm addressing the threshold standards 23 and 24. The man who gave the presentation did address light issues, but he very quietly said, at night when the lights are turned off, there is no light impact. My concern is that there is significant light impact from a dollar store when the store is open. And in the winter, when the sun sets at 5 and the dollar store may be open until 9, you have 4 hours of darkness when the dollar store will absolutely glow in the entire neighborhood. And that's what I found from the dollar store in Dolores. From my house, I can go outside and it glows on the other side of the river because of the light. And so the lighting can be addressed when the light is turned off after the store closes, but what about when it's open during dark hours of the fall and the winter? That's one of my concerns. So I am not in favor of the granting of this permit. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next.
Yeah, my name is John Rutledge. I live at 26505 Road N. I'd like to address the fact that I have probably 1,000 trucks that go up and down Road N. Everybody's figured out that they can go from 145 to 491, and that's what they use, and that's what these vehicles use to get over to 145. Another thing too, what about the police department? You've taken $200,000 out of the sheriff's department. How is that going to affect this thing? What about the fire department? You talk about the fire department. Well, they got their budget cut too. So how are you going to figure that we're going to have fire on a building? I don't even know what the building is. Is it a tilt-up or is it a stick-built? Yeah,
The questions are to us right now, and you'll have the opportunity to address them.
Best thing in the world to fall on their walls when they get heated. So I'm concerned about the police department, the fire department, and all our, things that we have. We have a terrible time just getting a sheriff's department out there for anything that's wrong. And they talk about wrecks that, what about the Volkswagens that, go through the fence on Triple S? You don't have that part in there because you're only looking at what 145 and N is. We have lots of wrecks on N. We have semis that are running propane and gas and everything else. Old Dominion runs up and down N all the time. A little tired of it. They're a little over 40 miles an hour since that's all the speed limit is. And especially when you live on N, you should be more concerned about what's going on, as far as I can tell. So, thanks.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Wendy Watkins. I live on Road N 27555. We've heard a lot, and I've lived there since 1997. We've heard a lot of discussion around traffic, fire safety, and public hazards. What I don't feel has been adequately addressed is just the rural nature of Road N. We live surrounded by small farms, and some not so small, but it is clearly residential agricultural. And to put a commercial business like a Dollar General is going to completely defile the rural nature of our community. And not to mention the fact we already have 5 of them and we don't need a 6th. So I know that Mr. Kinsey was talking about trying to make an aesthetic decision about what this was going to look like in our community, but my response to that is you can put pearls on swine, but it's still a pig. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Jesse Farias. I live at 27799 County Road N, and I'm just here to make comments. I got to give a little preface. I am recently retired from the federal government as a law enforcement officer for 36 years, and I had to work up to Mesa Verde for 20 years going that way, that direction. I just would like to say, and I'm not here, I don't know if Mr. Plank's still on there or not, traffic there, heading that way. I can tell you in the last 5 years, I personally assisted with 3 accidents at that corner. I've seen people who live there have seen the skid marks halfway into 145. The fender that sat there, I want to say 4 years ago on the side of the corner, that there is law enforcement, there are unreported accidents. We all know that. One of my big concerns here is that it was a count. If it was done manually, there is human error. I have not seen a counter on that intersection in the last 7, 8, 9, 10 years. I just put that out. I'm not doubting anything here. I'm just making some comments on that. And just things to be consideration. There are some unreported accidents. Again, this is just comments for me. I don't have dates and times when that happened, but I know in the last 3 years, and I know that because I retired 2 years ago, I assisted with 2 accidents. They weren't fatal, fender benders, bumpers, and they were exactly what Commissioner Candelara said on bumping into another car on that icy spot coming into the intersection. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Susan Kidd. I live at 12790 Highway 145, just about a quarter of a mile from County Road N. As a family of ranchers, we turn onto County Road N coming from Dolores, Groundhog. We have 80-some head of cattle. We're turning a semi down that County Road N to take down to our homestead. And there's many times that we have to wait for people to get off a County Road N so that we can turn a semi down that road. I find that we're getting rid of our agricultural land for all these businesses. What are we leaving our children? What are we carrying on? I mean, I want to leave my grandchildren farmland, ranch, something that means something. They can make their money, not a Dollar General. I was there when Mr. Showers and his wife lived there, and it was a sign shop. It wasn't a grocery store or a convenience store. It was a sign shop with a man and his wife. And so I oppose this a lot. I want my grandkids to be able to raise my cattle to produce later in life. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next. Come on down. You can line up down here, sir.
Hi, good morning. My name's Carolyn Landis, and I live at 15124 Road 28, County Road 28. And I've been there for about 15 years. I've been in Montezuma County since 1988. And I agree. I wanted to just say quickly that I agree and I support the comments of the previous speakers who've, talked about specific problems and related them to the county land use codes, particularly Chapter 2 and when it really goes into the high impact threshold issues with that. So I've heard and I agree with the concerns about increased traffic volumes and impacts of large truck activity, adequate fire and law enforcement protection, the subdividing of small acreage, adjudication of agricultural waters, and all of that. So I won't bore you with more of that because I think you're hearing it. But many speakers have commented on your responsibility as elected officials to protect the rural character of the county. That's kind of lined out in Chapter 2. and to protect and strengthen the established industries of agriculture, commerce, and all that we value here. And I think that the thing with the dollar store as being an issue that's not an issue in our land use codes is that it didn't exist, when the county was putting together visions for the future, like what has happened with the plethora of dollar stores around the nation in the last few years is kind of a new thing, and we're all learning about it together. I think the one thing that is real personal I want to say very quickly, and it's reflecting what Mr. Farias just said and others have said about the traffic, because that's my road into town, and I've seen personally many near misses on that intersection, and some of it has to do with the ice that we all deal with there in the winter time. And but the ones that have really hit me hard because they were so close to fatalities are when there's traffic, 2 lanes of traffic coming from the south, like coming from Cortez. Somebody's making a left hand from N, County Road N, onto 145 to go into Cortez, and there's a visibility issue with the 2 lanes there if there's larger vehicles hiding a smaller one. And I saw a near fatal accident there created by that situation. And I've seen it more than once, but one time my heart's beating, it was so close. So I think the traffic issue is a real thing to look at, and it's the threshold, saying 15 or, ew, I got beeped.
There we go.
You know what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hello, I'm Ken Porter. I live at 27098 Road N, or his neighbor. I've been next to him for 6+ years. He doesn't really live there. He comes and takes care of the property, and it's a nice looking property. All I got to say is I've got nothing but views right now, and to me they're going to be destroyed from my whole eastern view by this store, parking lot, lighting, etc. Now I am to the east. I didn't hear any concern about lighting to the east because he's there, but I just want to say that we already suffer people turning around. We have a driveway, double driveway. People come in and go out. Some of the people in this room probably use it. They turn around and go the other direction. It's busy already, and I'm worried that with this store and where he has the proposed driveway, it's going to affect even more the traffic in front of my house and the neighbors, and I'm afraid I might have to gate it just because it's so bad. And it's just a personal concerns, along with the fact I never use that store. So I'm not used to doing this, so I'm a little shaky, but my concerns are all of my property value, the traffic, and crime. I just think that small stores like that promote almost crime. It's an opportune place to stop, rob, and be on your way. There's nothing there. It's dark, and I don't see the police to, be patrolling it. So those are my concerns, and I hope you deny the permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hello, my name is Stephen Moore. I live at 13229 Road 27.6, just around the corner from this property that's being proposed for high impact. I appreciate the county attorney mentioning that commercial zoning does not guarantee a high impact large retail facility. It's commercial. There are other alternatives. Also, I'm happy that the land use code clearly defines and empowers the BOCC to guide decisions based on individual circumstances such as today. I encourage you to deny this high-impact permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, I'm Kathy Lilly. I live in Dolores and in the town of Dolores. Sorry? Can you hear me better? Okay. Kathy Lilly. I live in the town of Dolores, so a little bit a ways from this site. But I do travel that road. I've gone by that intersection, and since this issue's been up, I've been paying attention. I do question the traffic data. It just doesn't resonate with my lived experience of going up and down that road and seeing the near misses, the high speed of the traffic, the dynamic between big trucks and big vehicles and smaller vehicles. It seems like it's pretty dangerous, and this is going to just add more to that. My big concern here is light pollution, and I know that they talk about mitigating that, but still it's going to be a glowing box, as my neighbor just said. And we have one of those in Dolores. It is a glowing box. It doesn't matter what kind of mitigation you take, it's there. And that's going to be a tragic and fundamental shift and change to this corridor, which is a very dark corridor in the evening. It's beautiful, and it's beautiful because there's minimal light, and this is going to fundamentally change that. And so I'm concerned about that. I think it is going to impact property values for the people that live nearby. I don't think anybody wants to live close to something like this. So in order to preserve that, I would ask this commission to please adopt the previous recommendation against allowing this. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next.
My name is Ron Kotarski. I live at 28155 Road N. I've owned this property for 20 plus years. I'm concerned about the safety that will be on this narrow road. I'm concerned about the property values. Therefore, I'm asking you to deny this permit, the county commissioners to deny this permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning. My name is Teresa Hobine. I live at 12904 Highway 145. My driveway is in the turn lane going to N Road. And my biggest concern is the traffic, the speed on 145. Almost any time I come home, I'm rear-ended because people assume that I'm turning on N and not in my driveway. And as far as accidents, there's daily the horns are blaring because people are pulling out and other people are coming down 145 and almost get hit. So please take that into consideration because it's going to be a matter of time before I get rear-ended. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are at our 30 minutes time, so I'm going to reduce the time to 2 minutes now. It looks like it's narrowing anyway, so it is now 2 minutes, and we can continue. Next.
Good morning, County Commissioners. My name is Lynetta Schull, and I live at 27590 Road R, just north of County Road and about 2 miles. Dollar stores are a viable resource in some isolated areas, but it's only a few minutes to town for us in the area. We hear about all the studies and stuff, but I didn't hear anything about economic feasibility. If you only have 15 turns, which is a high impact, 15 cars coming in, does that make your store feasible? We heard 200 visits. Does that make that store feasible and an economic advantage to our county? What is the benefit to our community? County Road N does not have turning lanes on it. This is where your driveway will be. So who is going to be responsible for putting those turning lanes in? It will be us as county taxpayers.
I do have a concern about that. Also, the natural drainage there, we heard about the adjudicated water. That's a natural drainage, and wherever that cistern is located, there is concerns there. And then if that is on private property, as the gentleman suggested, he could put that on private property. How does that affect the resources for the dollar store to be, that cistern to be available and to have that controlled? And when will that fill? That's only a 3-inch line. That will take quite a while to fill that once they use it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Paul Copes. I live at 27555 County Road N. I've been there since 1997. I also ask that you deny this high impact permit. I have several thoughts. First off, the Planning and Zoning Commission, where we were here a month or so ago, they were unanimous in rejecting this request. Second, I have a couple of specific things. There was some talk about equating this with the Dollar General on the south side of town. That's a false equivalency. These are not similar places or environments. This is not a good place for a retail commercial store. There was mitigation comments made about lighting and noise. 200 or 300 cars a day or 30 cars a day. That's noise, that's dust, that's pollution. And to say that there will be no light leaving this property defies the laws of physics. Please consider maintaining the rural character of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Otis Sykes, I live at 19250 County Road 15, Yellow Jacket. I'm not for or against a dollar store. I never shop at any of these dollar stores. I never go there. So I got two things. I think the man bought this property in good faith and it's zoned commercial. I think he has a right to put something on there if he wants to. On the other hand, I think that maybe we should rezone it back to agricultural and residential. I'm not against him. I'm not for him or against him. Like I said, I don't shop at dollar stores. It makes no difference to me. And as far as safety, we all in this room pay tax dollars to the state of Colorado. The state of Colorado can make that safe. They could put a traffic light, they could put a 4-way stop sign, we could make that absolutely safe. I work in the oil and gas industry, and if we have a safety issue, we stop the job, we mitigate it, we correct it, and we go on with our work. But like I said, I'm not for or against, not against this man personally, don't know him, never met him, don't know his name. So I just think we should do one or the other. He has the right to do what he wants to do, but I think what you should do is rezone it. I think that would be the thing to do, just rezone it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. All right. Wait. Oh. All right.
Hi there, I'm Leah Burkett. I live at 27505 Road U.6 in Dolores. And although the developer has come here with his land use attorney today acting like it's their right to get this permit, I want to remind everybody this is a high impact special permission. They haven't proven that their special permission adds any value to anybody but their own pockets. And in fact, the impacts will be adverse in a number of ways. I don't think that it will add any tax revenue to the county's bottom line. I know y'all are worried about your budget position, but I think it's not going to create new shoppers. And it'll just be taking tax revenue from other dollar stores, redistributing it. I know the owner said he bought this because it was commercial. He has an obligation to understand the conditions that come with the commercial zoning, and that being the 15 trips. I am wondering about that lot because there's a house there that is residential, and there are minimum lot standards for commercial, there's minimum lot standards for residential. How do you have a residential on a commercial property? It's confusing. And then I think that there will be significant noise. Nobody's mentioned noise, but there's going to be a lot of backup beeps from the delivery trucks there. If you look at the way that that site plan is laid out, that truck has to back all the way up to the loading dock. Those backup beeps will carry for miles, maybe not miles, but to the surrounding neighbors. And then who will own that dollar store parcel in the end? Can they have a smaller parcel than the minimum required? Rhetorical questions, perhaps. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Okay. Seeing no more public comment, I'll close the public comment section of this application, and I will bring it back. I will allow you gentlemen to respond to a few of the questions here that I think that were specifically posed to you.
You want me to go first?
You can go first, Don.
So that is a commercial industrial overlay zone. We do not have a strict commercial overlay zone. It's a combination. It extends up between P and R on that stretch of highway. The other clarification on commercial zone property, commercial is the primary, but a residence is allowed as a secondary use of the commercial zone property. The only other commercial zone lot there is northwest. Sparks Plumbing has a commercial zone lot, and on the corner, northwest corner of Highway 145 and N is a permitted PUD for the Turtle Lodges. They have 6 rentals on that property plus the main house that was approved, probably, I don't know, 2018. But that's all just in that immediate area.
Okay. All right, Mr. Peters, I guess you're next.
Thank you. Thank you. Just to answer a few of the questions that came up here, and Mr. Kinsey might help me out too. But yes, this is one tax lot right now. There was a question about that. With respect to the, let's see, just a couple other things. With respect to the lighting study, so that lighting study was, or the lighting evaluation was with the lights on the building. So that's, I think there was a question about whether it was on or off, but that was assuming the lights are on in the building. And then I think we addressed commercial overlay. I think there was a general sentiment too about the lived experience with this intersection. And I certainly appreciate where folks are with that. I mean, I can't speak to it myself. I certainly haven't lived around here to know that. But at the same time, the state, the county's road and bridge folks, our traffic engineer needs to work within the highway traffic manuals, the standards that are applied, the traffic counts. That's how they set policy. That's how they make determinations on accesses, how they make determinations on whether A-cell, D-cell lanes are warranted, all those sorts of things. I mean, we have to have those standards that apply the same regardless of, what the project is, and that's how we make our determinations. So it is those standards, that's how CDOT makes its determinations, and their conclusions based on those standards are that this intersection will be functional even after the additional traffic counts here. And just to be clear, there was a comment or several comments about, the number of sales per day on that, so call it 300 trips. That's exactly what our traffic engineer estimated. So he said 678 total trips coming out of this property, and a trip is one, so one arriving, one leaving. one arriving is a trip, one leaving is a trip. So that lines up exactly with, again, the lived experience of folks saying that's about 300 trips at a dollar store. So that's our estimation. So we are accurately predicting in the information given to both the county and to CDOT. And then finally, I think there were just some general considerations about, there's a study from Clemson on the impact of dollar stores. So that study is limited to DeKalb County, at least my understanding. It's limited to DeKalb County, Georgia, which is a suburban county right outside of Atlanta. Looks at the impact of every single one, every single dollar store kind of retailer, whether suburban Atlanta is generalizable to Montezuma County. I have some doubts about that, but also, Mr. Kinsey is here today and has developed a number of different dollar stores in a number of different communities and, has not met that concern about this. So I understand that there might be limited data available about one place outside of Atlanta on this, but we're here today to make sure that this approval and, our ability to mitigate adverse impacts is going to address any concerns that you might have, and Mr. Kinsey's here to work with you on that. So if there's a way we can address that, we're open to the reasonable considerations of what's possible to do.
Okay, Mr. Kinsey?
Yeah, just a couple things. First of all, DeKalb County, I didn't know that's where the study was. My daughter lives there, and I don't think many of these people would want to live in DeKalb County. I wouldn't. I'll just say it that way. And I noticed, I was keeping count as we went down through there, almost every comment had to do with the dollar store. And we're really talking about a use, not a tenant. And the use is commercial. I was just wondering what would the reaction have been if I'd continued on with thoughts on a lumber yard or Tractor Supply or something else. Would the comments have been the same, or is it just the resistance to the dollar store? And seems like, there was a couple. I really appreciated the guy that worked with in the oil fields. It was zoned that way. Maybe it shouldn't have been, but it was. And it's right there in the county documents. This overlay zone says that that's where the county wants commercial development. But it sounds like the residents don't. So I don't, there's a conflict there, and we seem to be caught right in the middle of it. I think we did our homework pretty well. We had the zoning, thought we had the intent, we thought we had everything we needed to do this store. Some of the things that, we talked about safety. I've not had any stores that I've ever developed have issues with that. Had I put affordable housing there, which I guess I could, maybe that's a thought, we might have had an issue. But we'd have had a real safety issue there. I have a little experience with that one. It kind of is conflicting. And by the way, the guy that mentioned physics, I do know that light travels at 186,000 miles a second. And I'm not saying that you probably couldn't see lights driving down the highway if it was at nighttime. We're just talking about light overflowing onto the neighboring property. And we've done a study that shows that that's not the case. And we're willing to adjust the lights even further if there's some sort of issue with that. The dollar store to the south doesn't apply to this one. Well, they're both in overlay districts. Maybe one appears different to someone living in the north. I don't know what the people down in the south part of the county would say about that. Maybe the same. People keep talking about this house. I initially intended to tear down the house. It was my plan because it was in pretty rough shape. And when the first ideas that I had to do a commercial development there didn't come to fruition, we just decided to put some money in it and use it. And I love it. I like using it. I'm there, do a lot of work in Arizona and New Mexico and Nevada and Colorado, so that's my office when I'm in the West. So, sure, yeah.
I just was looking at my notes. I wanted to jump back on one other issue that had been raised on this too. So there's a question of the water rights and the wetlands on this property. That's the first, at least that I'm aware of, that anybody has raised the issue of wetlands. This certainly went through the referral review process with the county. So nobody in any of the referral agencies or on county staff had indicated that there's an issue with wetlands. And then as to adjudicated water rights, I don't think that you all need to worry about that component. I mean, that's the division engineer's problem if there's a water rights issue. Again, I'm not aware of any concern there, but certainly if there were development that were interfering with adjudicated water rights, I mean, the folks with priority are going to know about that and are going to have an issue, and they're going to tell the division engineer. So there's an enforcement mechanism on that, and nobody wants to interfere with water rights. I don't ever want to get crosswise with somebody on a water rights issue. So I don't think there's any concern on that.
With regard to that, we've got a retention pond designed. I mean, the water will flow on the lot like it does right now, and we'll capture the water that comes off the impervious surfaces so that it has time to soak into the ground or not run at in a greater rate than it normally does anyway. So I think we'll, it's like Andy said, the engineers will do the drainage studies and we'll take care of the water. We'll handle it like it's supposed to be handled. With regard, not too much was said about fire in these comments, mostly traffic, mostly dollar store. I would like to just mention a conversation with Roy and some of his concerns because that letter was mentioned earlier on. Roy and I talked about it. I said, Roy, what are your concerns? And a lot of that has to do with the size of his district, his manpower, his equipment. And he said, I said, really what you're saying is if I were building a house, you'd have the same concern. In other words, do you have the people? Do you have the trucks? And he said, we can get to you in, I think he said 3 or 4 minutes. It's about 4 miles to his office there. But he said, if we're fighting a fire over on the Utah border, and then you have a fire, we might have an issue. So that's why I think we've worked out all that. When it comes to traffic, I'd like to be able to go to the DOT and say, look, I kind of sort of feel like this is going to be safe, and I don't need to build any turn lanes. But they don't accept that. They require that I go get experts to do the studies, to do the analysis, and to provide them proof that the intersection either works or it doesn't, that the entry or the driveway either works or it doesn't. And that's what we've done here. It's not my opinion. It's not Andy's opinion. It's somebody that does this for a living. They've got offices in 35 states, and they're saying that intersection is underutilized. So I understand how these people feel, but we're trying to rely on the experts to address the issues that were brought up at the Planning Commission meeting the other night.
I can speak to some of the traffic comments as well, if
okay.
interested.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
One of the first ones was bringing up the seasonal variation in the traffic data. And so I went on the CDOT website and looked up US 160, State Highway 491, and State Highway 145. There's no seasonal variation data on there. And CDOT does provide that. We utilize that data in certain mountain communities. And so typically when that data is not provided, that means the seasonal variation is less than 20%. Even if we inflated our numbers 20%, we're at level service B right now. We're not getting to D, E, or F. Maybe it goes to level service C. I'm fairly confident it'd actually stay level service B if we inflated it 20%. There were concerns with the narrow roadway and having heavy vehicles. This is going to be a passenger vehicle-centric development. Doug can kind of correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing there will be one heavy vehicle delivery per week. The rest will be passenger vehicles, whether employment or patrons. There are wide striped curb returns required by CDOT standards on that leg for making that movement, or if there is a heavy vehicle. There was a mention of the hay trucks. Obviously, if you have oversized vehicles, there's going to be issues with that. But designed for heavy vehicle, that has already occurred. Brought up that there have been 3 accidents that had occurred at this intersection. We use this data from CDOT. They have a pretty good database, industry standards. So there may be some that don't get reported, but just want to talk to that the one accident was only at this intersection. We do have data for all of State Highway 116. There were 78 reported accidents in 116 miles in a 5-year stretch, but just one at this intersection. Whether the counts were valid or not, we've done over 1,000 traffic studies in the last 5 years. It's industry standard to use the mile vision technology. Everyone does it. And so to say that they're not valid would say that every traffic study in the state is not valid. The 15 trips threshold, that is just for the permitting process. That does not mean that's a high generator. From a perspective of 15 trips, we don't usually do a traffic impact study. CDOT was only requiring a turn lane evaluation with more than 100 trips during the peak hour. This development doesn't generate 100 trips during the peak hours, expected to be 71. Typically, we're doing a traffic study if there's sometimes more than 50 or in the CDOT's threshold 100. So a lot of times the threshold's 50 or 100. So we're barely over kind of those thresholds, even if it's at 50. CDOT actually has really rigid requirements. They're trying to reduce accidents. They're trying to reduce crashes. They're trying to improve operations of their facilities. They have some of the most rigid standards, and we've adhered to all of their standards. Putting in a traffic signal, that's a good idea from a safety perspective, but it's nowhere near warranting a traffic signal. And so it's industry standard not to put in a signal if it doesn't meet warrants. And then from the crash data we have, it doesn't meet the crash warrants as well. Speed of the roadway, we already talked about how CDOT is reactive in speed studies rather than proactive, but you just have to engage CDOT to do a speed study and to see if the speed limit is appropriate for that highway. And I think that touched pretty much everything. I can take questions as well.
All right, thank you, Jeff.
Hey, Jeff, if you'll just hang on just in case there's a question. I just wanted to say a couple more things, because earlier on someone said that we didn't do the counts on County Road N. We counted that traffic as well, didn't we?
Yeah, I forgot that note. Thanks, Doug. We counted it on February 21st, 2024, 24-hour counts with the Mile Vision technology. Like I said, industry standard, so it was collected. I looked up the forecast, or the weather that day was 55 degrees and sunny, so there wasn't any conditions that were impacting regular travel patterns.
And it counted the traffic on Road N too, though, not just 145.
Yep, full intersection.
Right.
So County Road N movements and State Highway 145 movements.
And
so
that's
all 12 movements
right.
were counted.
And that's all in the study that I provided you guys. And I'll be real quick here. Someone said, did I understand that the high impact permit was required as well? When I bought this land, the planning director was a lady named Leanne. I had several discussions with Leanne about what the zoning was and what would be allowed there and what could be allowed. And I had a very good confidence level that we could develop this parcel commercially before I ever closed on the land. So we knew more than just the zoning. We knew what we had to do. And we think after going through the process the other night, we understand what the concerns were, and we think we've addressed all of those now. So other than the fact that it's a dollar store, it is a dollar store.
Okay,
So,
all right. This is a conversation for the board, if the public would please keep their comments to themselves. Ian, go ahead.
So I guess at this point, it'll come back to the commissioners, and I just want to refocus you guys on what you need to consider today. Again, the things you consider today: submittals, P&Z recommendations, findings of fact, and decision criteria. We got a lot of submittals today. We've got traffic study. We've got some other information that was presented to us by the public. It's up to you guys to determine whether you've had sufficient time to look at that. I assume that, I know that you were looking over it during this thing, and so certainly that's something that you have to consider. And so continuing this public hearing to a date certain is something allowed by our land use code in the event that somebody on this commission feels that they need more time to review.
Which is just where I was going to head, because we've got 6 packages here that are pretty significant, and I think that they all need to be reviewed before we make any kind of a determination. We can't obviously sit up here and review these packets, specifically a traffic engineer or the wetland study.
And
I think that,
and so I think,
a continuation at this point in time would not be a bad idea. However,
I've got to ask planning, was any of these submittals presented during the P&Z hearing?
We did have the original traffic study.
Okay.
The new information was emailed yesterday.
So most of this is new to you guys
it's
too?
new.
Correct.
Fire chief's submittal.
Yeah, no, we
emails
did
new.
have the original Fire Protection District's letter. I had not seen the email with the revised one that was posted up on the screen. And to be honest, I was busy yesterday and have not read those documents either.
so
we have some substantial submittals.
You certainly have the option to continue. I think it's important, though, to continue to just give a legal overview because it may bear on your decision whether to continue today or not. Findings of fact, P&Z recommendations, obviously it was discussed that P&Z recommended this for denial. That's something that you guys have to consider in rendering a decision on this application. Finding of fact and decision criteria. We heard a lot about significant adverse impacts today. We heard about light, we heard about traffic, we heard about property values. And you need to consider all those things. Specifically, I think we got a lot of information from the applicant about light and traffic. We didn't get as much information about property values. That was certainly a concern that was expressed by the public and something for you guys to consider. Again, I gave you the definition of a significant adverse impact earlier, but a significant adverse impact shall be any impact that creates an increased risk to the health, safety, or welfare of the citizens of the county, a significant reduction in neighboring property values, or other unfavorable or harmful consequences. That's a significant adverse impact. That's how it's defined in the land use code, and that's something that you guys have to consider. We heard comments about the rural character of the county. That's certainly something that our land use code discusses. We also heard comments that this is in a commercial industrial overlay zone, and that is relevant as well as you make your decision. The last thing I would touch on, and I think that this was touched on by the applicant and certainly some of the public commenters as well, commercial zoning gives you the right to conduct commercial operations on the property. It does not give you a right to exceed the threshold standards, and that's why we're here today for the high impact permit. What I would say along those lines is nature of the business does matter. This is a high impact permit. This is a high, if you guys can just, it's a lot easier to talk to these guys. I'm not talking to the public right now, so just keep your thoughts at a minimum, okay? So nature of the business does matter. This is an application for a dollar store, and that business may affect properties in a different way than certain other businesses would. And I think that that's something that you guys need to consider today as you look at this. Adverse impacts associated with certain commercial uses are different than adverse impacts with other commercial uses. And so those are the things that you need to consider today. And so I think at this point, all options are on the table. You can move forward with a approval or denial today. You can certainly approve with conditions. We heard the applicant talk about some of the conditions that could be implemented, and you guys can certainly come up with those as well. Or you can make a motion to continue and consider some of this information. It's really in the board's hands.
All right, gentlemen. Those are our options that we have right now. What's comments? Commissioner Copenhagen, Lindsay.
This is a lot of material, and we've got a tremendous amount of input from folks to go over. I would move that we continue to the next available date. Don, do you have one?
Would 1 week be enough time for review? We could schedule it April 30th.
Enough time for you?
That's fine.
Okay. April 30th?
9 a.m., April 30th.
Are you good with that? Second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to continue this public hearing to 9 o'clock, April 30th, which is next Tuesday, which will give us time to review all of the information that we have had presented to us. With that, is there any further discussion?
No.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And commissioners, one thing I would just caution you, we've got a week before this public hearing's continued. You've got a lot of information that was submitted, public comment in front of you. Do not receive any additional information. You understand? What you have in front of you is what you have, that's what you can consider. So don't look at emails, don't consider anything that hasn't been presented in this public hearing between now and next week.
Got it. Perfect. All right. Okay, gentlemen, with that, this is a continuation, and it will be next Tuesday to give us time to review all of the material that we have.
And I assume
I
that-
apologize. Did you all finish voting? There was, oh, you did? Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
And I assume that date works for you guys.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
And just one other thing, your folks' letters that you wrote to us in email have been sent to the clerk for the record.
So we can't look at those either. I know that we've gotten a lot of
Well,
them,
you,
but those go.
you can look at them now that they're in the record.
We can now, but
Yeah.
prior to this meeting, we can't look at them.
We sit as a quasi judicial board, and it's kind of like preempting a jury, you know, talking to a jurist before the trial.
So they are in the record, so there's just that much more information that we now have to actually look at, further than what was submitted today. So thank you all. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Great,
gentlemen.
thank you for your time.
All right.
And just to clarify, Commissioner Candelaria, there will not be any more public comment at the
No.
continued public
It's just a
hearing.
continuation for a decision. Yeah. Thank you.
Don? This is the photometric study that you can read.
And we will take a brief 5-minute recess here. All right, we are back. The recess is over, and we are going to bring it back to you, Don. Do you have anything else?
We do not have anything else currently unless you've got questions or issues to address.
I don't at this time.
That was enough?
That was
That's
enough for a
plenty.
while. Yeah.
All right.
That'll
Plenty
last
for
me
the
till next
day.
week.
That's all we got then. We'll let you move on.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, now we're going to go into the public comment session of the actual board meeting. Montezuma County Commissioners welcomes you to this meeting. Person speaking during public comment will be limited to 3 minutes, or depending on the number of people wishing to speak, it may be reduced to allow all the members of the public the opportunity to address the board. When addressing the board, please state your name and address for the record prior to providing your comments, and comments to individual supervisors or staff are not permitted, and participants may not yield their time to others. And with that, the public comment session of this meeting is open.
Good morning. My name is Mike Lynch. I live at 21730 Road S in Cortez. I usually like to write out my comments so I don't make mistakes. I'm going to do it off the hip this morning. I hope I don't make mistakes. But there's two things I wanted to say this morning. One, I watched the recording of the workshop, I think it was April 8th, a couple weeks ago, and I saw the report given by the Clerk and Recorder's office, and I listened to that part, at least in its entirety. And I want to publicly thank the clerk for going into the detail that she did, describing the cast vote records and the things that their office have to do, which is not publicly known, because I haven't read some of the things that she brought up in the in statute, but there are actually apparently other rules she has to follow, and so I really want to thank their office, the Clerk and Recorder, for doing that. That was helpful to me, and I hope it was helpful to others. The other thing I want to bring up is, as I understand, last week the United States Supreme Court, in a decision of 9-0, determined that generic road impact fees are unconstitutional. And so I would encourage this board to check into that ruling, because unless the road impact fee is specific to address an issue on the roads leading to the property under consideration, as I understand it, I'm not a legal guru or anything, I'm not an attorney, but as I understand it, unless they're specific about to address something regarding the property that's being charged that fee, then it would be unconstitutional. And they related it to the takings clause of the Constitution. So I believe that's something that ought to be taken up and considered by the board in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. All right, seeing no further public comment, I'll close the public comment session of this meeting, and I'm going to move on. First thing on our agenda next is the Social Services Monthly Report, and I see our ladies over there. Come on down.
Thank you.
Let's take care of these. quickly.
Yeah. I would so move we approve the minutes from the March meeting of the Board of Social Services for Montezuma County. And also the expenditures in the amount of $1,501,319.59.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to accept the record of proceedings for the regular session Tuesday, March 26, 2024, and to approve the payables for March in the amount of $1,501,319.59. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, Kelly?
Good morning. I just have a few updates from this last month. I know that in the month before last, we spent some time talking about the CBMS, which is the Colorado Benefits Management System that our economic security team uses. And as a point for you all to be aware of, is it's talked about at the state level and improvements to that system. On the week of April 15th through the 19th, it spent a considerable portion of its time giving us errors and down. And on Friday the 19th, it was down at 10 a.m. and never came back to life until Monday. And so that does have a significant impact to those that need to receive benefits timely. It impacts our ability to process applications and redetermine applications timely. And so I say that just letting you all know that that state system continues to be a thorn in our side.
Dysfunctional?
Yeah. But we've doubled down and keep putting dollars to make it work. So we're rolling into contract season, so we're looking at core contracts and TANF contracts that will renew in July, and then all of the other MOUs that expire on June 30th. So wanted to give you all a heads up on that as that work begins. And then lastly, I wanted to celebrate in child welfare. This last month, we had 5 children find their forever homes. Closed that out, and that's huge success and a reason to celebrate. And then bring your attention to Child Abuse Awareness Month. It is April, it's Child Abuse Awareness Month. We will have staff out in blue tomorrow from 1:30 to 3:30, and our foster care coordinator will be handing out some items related to Child Abuse Prevention Month, informational material, and recruiting foster parents, or at least providing information to the public about becoming a foster parent. So you'll see that both this week and next. And other than that, business as usual. We keep on trucking.
Congratulations to you and your staff for those people that, those kids that found their home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's big. 5?
It's a big deal.
5.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's good.
It's a big number.
Good.
Yeah, it's unusual for us to have
Yes.
so many. Mhm.
When you're 1 and 2 at a time, 5 may not sound like a lot, but
It is a lot. We usually
is.
don't get 5 in
Almost
5 years.
A 200% increase, that's huge.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
So,
congratulations.
yeah,
All right.
that's all I
You
have.
Anything else, Commissioner? Good, okay, all right, thank you, appreciate it. We're gonna go into unfinished business. A lot of this was in our discussion yesterday that we had at our workshop. We do not have a letter of support to look at and/or to sign. Today, we did have a presentation yesterday, and we basically put it back into their court to have them write the letter, and then we would look at it for submittal and/or possible approval. We did have a discussion as far as it related to the landfill cell 5 request for proposal. It was recommended by Mel Jarman, our department head, to take the low bid of $867,733.13. It was reviewed by the engineer and himself, and it does meet all the qualifications of the bid submittal form.
I would so move we award the contract for the cell opening at our county landfill to Kansai Inc., 719 Arrow West Road, Grand Junction, in the amount of $867,733.13.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept the bid form and to Consite Inc. for the landfill cell 5 bill in the amount of $867,733.13. Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Next, we also had a grant submission form by Public Health. This one is for the Colorado National Collaborative, the CNC, and it's a reimbursement for $113,000. Do you guys, gentlemen, have any questions?
No.
Okay.
I move to approve this Montezuma County grant application submission form in the amount of $113,000 for the Public Health Department. Suicide Prevention Program, Colorado National Collaborative.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept the Montezuma grant application submission form for the CNC grant in the amount of $113,000. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next, we also had another grant from the Public Health Department, and this one is for the emergency preparedness and the response to public health emergency for Montezuma County.
I move to approve this Montezuma County grant application submission form for the Health Department for the Public Health Emergency Preparedness for the reimbursement of $53,489.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to accept the Montezuma County grant application submission form for the Public Health Department for emergency preparedness in the amount of $53,489. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. We also had presented by the SO yesterday, the sheriff, a Forest Service contract for 2024. I believe it was in the amount of $16,000. There was an increase of $5,500 for tow-away vehicles, and this is something that the Forest Service pays the county and the sheriff's department for removing or providing law enforcement on their properties.
I would so move that we accept the modification of grant or agreement, whichever, we'll argue about that later, between Forest Service and Montezuma County in the amount of, what was it? $16,000.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the Forest Service 2024 contract in the amount of $16,000.
And before you guys vote, I just wanted to bring up a couple things. Commissioner Lindsay was quick in making his motion, but this is very similar to an agreement that we've had with the Forest Service now for quite some time. It's not different.
Right.
There was some concern raised yesterday about carryover costs and whether those were going to happen and whether money carries year to year in this contract. It does not. This contract is paid per unit that we remove or per action that we take. And so these are the 16,000 number is kind of what's planned, but we won't exceed that, and this is what we're allocated, but it's not going to carry over because if we don't utilize it all, then it'll just go back to the Forest Service.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay. Did you?
Yeah, I have one for
Did you second it?
No, I made the motion.
We had a second.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, then it's been moved and seconded to accept the Forest Service 2024 contract, again, at $16,000. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 It's on the first
We also had represented to us yesterday, which was presented about 3 weeks ago from our fleet department as far as vehicles for reduction of the fleet. They were highlighted. 5 of these were for the sheriff's department. They are older vehicles, 2016s and 17s. They have mileaged out by 18,000 miles, 35,000 miles, 12,000, 10,000, and 5,800 miles. We did get information last night receiving all of the notification, which this went back to the sheriff in June of last year, notifying them of the reduction of the fleet, and then to have a schedule made so that it would be appropriate to make sure that they had their shifts covered. So with that, anything else to add?
No.
Anything else, Commissioner?
Is this their work schedule? Is that what this is?
That's their work schedule.
That was for a week. I
Shows
thought.
them off.
Should
I think we go as off.
should this be?
Shows that they have an average.
Travis, do you want to add to it?
Should this be
Do you have anything else to add to it?
Is this a
I mean, we're looking at the sheet.
Yeah, I mean, I just saw it just now.
Fader just brought it.
Let me ask this question. Should this be made public? The schedule? I mean,
No,
I mean, this
that's
is.
not.
Yeah, because we don't
That was
want.
just for our
This is
eyes.
kind of a security.
Yeah, it's just for our eyes. It's not for anybody else's.
And this is the first I've seen of it. I just
Yeah, that was brought up to us.
saw it.
Mike, it was just basically the comments yesterday was, we obviously need to make sure that we have enough to provide the services that are available, and that's basically their shift schedule.
Yeah.
Nothing was provided.
And
to
was
us
this
by the
provided by
sheriff.
the sheriff?
That's not what we're looking at.
No.
That, we have a shift
That is,
schedule in front of
that
us.
is
We don't want to know
just
when
the
people are off and on.
vehicles, that is just the vehicles that are highlighted from each department in the county that are up for reduction. And there's 2 or 3 pages, if we scroll down, there's actually not just one. So. Questions? I actually did have a question. I wish Shane was here because the amount of money that we're spending on maintenance on these older vehicles is pretty significant. I mean, $13,000, $8,800. I mean, we're spending a lot of money on these older vehicles, and I think that was probably part of the reason why we decided to time them out at either
Yeah.
$100,000 for the SO and then $150,000 for the rest of the county because they were not emergency vehicles. But, you know, as we look at our fleet in general as a whole, we're always looking at maintenance costs also because some of these maintenance costs are absorbent. So,
And given what our state legislature's up to now, it's all gonna tie in. We're gonna talk PSST here in a minute. And we're looking at a significant additional reduction in revenues.
I think this decision was made back in June when we had this first conversation. So I think at this point in time, this is really an administrative position. The decision was already made to keep the SO vehicles for 100,000 miles, and then the reduction would be happening, and that was also in an email that you sent to us, Travis. So anything else you'd like to add to that?
Well, we're talking about specific vehicles here.
These are, yeah,
And,
they're all specific.
and so, I mean, I think that at this point, just for purposes of full public disclosure and to give the administrator clear direction, I mean, if you guys are going to cut these vehicles out of the fleet without replacement, I think a motion needs to be made on the record right now,
Okay.
saying what you're going to do and how you're going to do it and when you're going to do it, and just so everybody has clear direction.
And I mean, just for knowledge, how many vehicles we have in our total fleet? You know?
Countywide?
Yeah,
I'm not sure countywide.
okay.
He gave us that. If you go down to the bottom, Travis, it might actually be on the, and it might not be.
It's not on countywide.
So that's the entire fleet right there, so I didn't count them either, but.
And I think the last piece of information that you guys
94.
need to,
Yeah, we have 94 vehicles in our fleet.
the last thing that you guys need to consider in making this decision is obviously, it's the county's job to provide the sheriff with a fleet that's adequate to do his job. So just making sure that if these vehicles are cut, that there's still sufficient amount of vehicles to do the job. And again, I don't have the numbers in front of me. That's really beyond my purview, but that's an important piece of this decision as well. Yep.
Your pleasure. Like I said, I think this decision was already made back in June, was that we were going to keep 150,000 miles for the rest of the fleet in the county, and the SO was going to be cut at 100,000 miles, and then we were looking at the reduction of the entire fleet in its entirety. I think that's what Shane has brought to us. If obviously these vehicles can be repurposed, he can do that. But looking at some of the maintenance costs, I'm not sure he would do that anyway. They would probably just leave the fleet.
Yeah.
So, again, if we want to make another determination or a motion, I think then we can obviously do that. But I think we're talking not just these 5, I think we're talking everything that's highlighted.
Yeah.
It's the entire fleet, which gives direction to the administrator.
I would so move we make the fleet reduction without replacement of the vehicles highlighted.
So I think, well, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sure.
I'm not,
I don't want to do this, but
the thing of it is, no. I'm not against getting rid of these older vehicles. I'm not comfortable with where he's at with his vehicles and his staff. That's where I'm not comfortable with. As far as him being able to respond to calls and stuff, where we're at with his actual number of vehicles. Is these all his here?
No, just that kind of orange color.
orange, tan, whatever,
The yellow, I think, are just,
additional vehicles in the fleet.
they're all over. They're from,
Which portion of this is the sheriff's fleet?
This,
I mean, not the ones that are
Just
being
the
cut,
orange.
but,
they're all, just the orange.
but what about the sheriff's fleet that aren't being cut? I mean, like this, for instance, like the 3046, the 2016 Chevy Tahoe, is that a sheriff's vehicle?
I think those are all coded, all the sheriff's vehicles are coded 30, aren't they, Travis?
I believe so.
When Shane presented
Those-
it, he
yeah.
just highlighted them as that.
So there's, geez,
There's 5 on there
These
right
are the
now.
total vehicles, so the sheriff currently has 36.
36 vehicles for the sheriff.
So you're reducing it by 5, you're leaving them with 30 vehicles total.
What might be helpful, and again, it's up to you guys can make this decision. What might be helpful would be to have a full breakdown of what vehicles are at the sheriff's office, how many patrol vehicles there are, how many transport vehicles there are, and really do a deep dive into that number.
So we have asked for that. If you looked at those emails last night that Travis sent to the sheriff, we've asked for it several times, and we get no communication. So it's really hard to make that determination from him when we don't know. When we started talking about this last June, this was the reduction of the entire county, and that's already taken place. So yesterday when he was here, he said, well, give me another week. Well, how much I mean, a significant time, it's been almost a year now with no response to any emails or conversation. And I guess, I understand your concern, Commissioner, but when he's got 30, to end up with 30 vehicles with the amount of deputies that we have on the road and the 16 new ones that we just put in place, I think that we are more than adequately covering it. And again, that's been presented by the public, is that we don't need all the vehicles sitting at home, sitting outside of these guys' yards. I think with the reduction, like Commissioner Lindsay said, with what we're facing or potentially facing, we just the reduction of the fleet was going to happen. And I think that we have adequately proven that we have enough to keep on the road, to keep everybody safe. Along with the newer vehicles, that's why we went to leasing, so that when they timed out at $100,000, we're just leasing them at $1,000 a piece and not having the capital outlay of the $60,000 to $70,000. So I think that was part of that conversation that we had in June. So. All right, well, I'll second the motion. It's been moved and seconded to continue on and give the direction to the administrator to continue on with the reduction of the entire fleet that was proposed to us from the fleet manager as presented.
Is there
Any
a
further
date in that
discussion?
motion? I think just making it as definitive as possible so everybody's on the same page. When do you want this to be done by? When do you want these things out of the fleet?
30 days, 60 days?
30 days.
Okay, and included in the motion would be a 30-day time frame. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. All right, now we're going on to a discussion and possible signing of a resolution requesting the PSST, the Public Safety Sales Tax. Ian?
So we did submit this up to the Department of Revenue. They came back with some comments. We made a few adjustments. The only potential holdup at this point, when we got estimated revenues for this sales tax from the Department of Revenue, my understanding is that the amount that we got, the estimate that we got, the 8.2 million plus change, was without the exemption that you guys decided to put in. One of the things that we need to put in this ballot question is an estimate of what we believe this tax is going to generate. And certainly it's an estimate. Now, I've been trying to get confirmation from the Department of Revenue to be sure that that this estimate is going to be sufficient for the ballot question. Now, obviously, with the exemption, it's probably going to be slightly less than that. And so we need to work to either get confirmation that this number is going to be okay, or to get a different number from the state with the exemption added in. So I would just ask that we table this one more week. I think everything's ready to go. It's just that number, and quite frankly, that number changed a little bit when we decided to put this exemption in, and so it's been difficult to get that number, as I understand it.
Correct, yeah, working with the DOR, obviously they couldn't provide us with figures on the exemption for sales. Just total sales without exemptions is the 8.2 million. Obviously, if we go with the exemption, it's going to be a little bit lower, so.
And it very well may be that this 8.2 million is going to be okay for purposes of the ballot question. I just want to get confirmation on that, and so.
Right, because I think the DOR we were struggling because of that exemption, and we don't know really what that exemption.
Correct, and we asked,
gonna
but they just
be.
couldn't provide it.
So the numbers are calculated basically without the exemption in there, so we know that it's going to be less. It's just
And I think that's going to be fine. I just want to get confirmation from the
Okay.
Department of Revenue just to be sure that we're
All right.
completely on track.
Well, then we will table that until next week for a decision, so we can move that forward, Travis. All right, we have an executive session now for the purpose of receiving legal advice as it pertains to the CIP contract, and Ian, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so as we talked about this in the workshop yesterday, in the two CIP contracts, the one contract with Cortez Fire Protection District and the other contract with Axis. What we talked about yesterday was the need for those two contracts to mirror one another in terms of a termination clause. The termination clause that Axis agreed to was a termination for cause clause, a very strict termination clause. Cortez Fire Protection District's legal representation has pushed pretty hard for a looser clause that would allow for termination for cause, and cause including financial shortcomings. And so it's a much looser termination clause, and it would certainly apply to all of the parties involved. The reason that it's important that the contracts mirror one another is because if you ran into a situation where we had the termination clause in the Cortez Fire Protection District that allowed for termination for financial shortcomings, our contract with Axis only allows for termination for cause. And so in essence, Cortez Fire could terminate. We would not be able to terminate with Axis, and conceivably Cortez Fire wouldn't be on the hook for pulling the plug on the program, and yet we would still have this agreement with Axis that we need to fulfill. What I need at this point is just direction as to which way you want to go with these contracts. If you want the looser termination for cause that allows for cause including financial shortcomings, then I'll go to Axis and explain the situation and hopefully get their contract to a point where it mirrors the Cortez Fire contract, or vice versa. If you only want this to be terminated for cause, then obviously that's the contract that we're going to have to present to Cortez Fire, and that's the contract that ultimately, hopefully they'll accept. I've got this executive session on the agenda if there are specific legal questions that you guys would like to address regarding this. I mean, I think most of this has been laid out in the open. If you feel like we need the executive session, it is here. If you feel comfortable giving me direction in public right now, you can certainly do that. Ultimately, there are advantages and disadvantages to both of these things. Certainly the termination for cause, the looser termination for cause that includes the financial shortcomings, provides a lot more flexibility in terms of being able to get out of this contract if there are financial difficulties on the part of any party. And so that's an advantage. The disadvantage is you don't have the same kind of stability with the program that locks these third-party providers in to, in essence, provide services till the end of the contract. And so it's really up to you guys what you want out of these.
Just from me, and I'll ask the other two commissioners, but I don't think we need an executive session to discuss this. I think it's been pretty well laid out. I think it's, I don't have any reason why I would need an executive session for this, so I appreciate you putting on there, but if you guys, what's your pleasure?
I don't think we need one, really.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't really see a need for
Okay.
one.
Well, then we're going to go by the executive session, and we're going to just go give you the direction now for the possible signing of the CIP contract. So, Commissioner Copenhaver, I'll let you go first.
I think we should get Axis contract to get in line with the fire.
So the more flexible termination clause that allows for termination if one of these entities runs into financial shortcomings.
They're both terminated.
Okay,
That's what.
okay, that's your,
my
yep,
field.
yep.
I mean, we're already at third. We kind of determined that yesterday. So, yeah, the more flexible contract that they're requesting at this point in time, it's an annual contract, so I don't have any issues with that either.
My only issue is if they're looking at financial shortfalls, don't enter into the contract in the first place.
Well, that would certainly err towards the more strict
Right.
Correct.
termination for cause idea. And so it sounds like we've got two commissioners that want the more flexible. Maybe you're more on the.
Well, I'm just staying,
Okay.
I mean, we've been waiting now for how long for these contracts? They're still providing the service,
Yeah.
but the contract's not signed. So
Just as well.
They develop their budget, they know what they're going to spend,
Yeah.
and worst case scenario, we approved the second shift for the CIP. If we have to pull that back, we can pull that back.
Oh, so
The flexible contract for me, I would agree with Commissioner Copenhaver on this. I don't see that it's not a, I don't see it being that big of a
No, it's not a
argument or a
deal
fight.
breaker.
No.
Okay.
So,
Well, I've got my direction, and I'll get these to mirror one another. I'll reach out to Axis, and we'll, assuming there's no big objection from Axis, we'll have them on the agenda next week.
all right. Well, there's your direction, and we'll put that, Travis, in for possible signing next week as it relates to a more flexible contract that the CPFD had provided us. Okay, gosh, moving right along here. Ian, your report.
We received an order from the court yesterday regarding Ironwood's motion to reconsider the fines that have been assessed against the Ironwood Mill. That motion was filed a little over a month ago. The county responded, and then Ironwood submitted a reply to the county's response. The court pretty unequivocally ordered that the fines stay in place. The $70,000 a week fines stay in place. Ironwood has not complied with the terms of the stipulated injunction or the amended stipulated injunction. And so fines remain in place. With the commissioner's blessing, my suggestion is that we go ahead and file another motion to reduce outstanding fines to a judgment. Already, nearly $300,000 in fines have been reduced to judgment. A rough calculation as to the amount of fines that have not been reduced to judgment. So we've got everything through February 4th of this year reduced to judgment. Since that time, by my calculation, an additional $385,000 have accrued. And so my thought is that we should file a motion to reduce that $385,000 or close to it. It's going to be right in that ballpark. That was my estimate. Reduce that amount to judgment. And so we're basically reducing everything to judgment through the end of last week would be my recommendation. So I just needed to get some direction from you guys on whether that's the way you want to move forward. I think it makes a lot of sense because, obviously I know that the county's very concerned about the fire danger there and some of the issues that surround that pile. And so, we need to continue to apply pressure and hopefully compel Ironwood to do what they committed to do in that stipulated injunction.
And I think from our conversations publicly in the past, we all agreed that it needs to be
Keep it going.
the junction, keep it going, so
Okay.
keep it going.
So I'll go ahead and file a motion to reduce those accrued fines to judgment.
Yep.
Okay.
Good with that, Commissioner? Okay. All right.
There was a mediation last Wednesday, in our matter involving the Fair Board. Ultimately, that mediation was unsuccessful in resolving the outstanding issues. And so that administrative process through the Colorado Civil Rights Division will continue. There's a couple different options at this point that can happen. One can be that a hearing is held in front of an administrative hearing officer. At the end of that hearing, the division would either issue a right to sue letter or not issue a right to sue letter. Or from my reading of the statute and the regulations, they can issue a right to sue letter right now, and then that letter would give the litigant the opportunity to litigate this in state or federal court. One of the interesting pieces of Colorado law is in these civil rights claims, the administrative process has to be exhausted before civil claims can be filed into the court, and so that's the point that we're at. Again, that mediation was unsuccessful. I can't discuss the details of what went on in that mediation. That's all confidential, but it was not successful in resolving the issue. And that's all I have to report at this point.
You know,
I
this
wonder
one-
how much money we've spent on county attorneys over a fair board.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah. Well, it's an ongoing case, and so
I understand
I
that,
I wouldn't make a lot of public comment on
I'm
that.
not. I stopped. I'm done. All right. Ian, are you done? You just want to get us all worked up, right?
This is a day for it, so just keep going, buddy.
I'm trying to settle everybody down, but it
Just
seems like
amazing
I do the opposite.
Some of the things that we have to deal with for such offenses. Anyway, Travis, sorry.
Just a couple things. I was out most of the week last week. Did work a lot on House Bill 211110, the digital accessibility. We've been putting out an email regarding social media probably this week. Did meet with Leslie, talked about the RAR and the potential revenue losses based upon what the state's wanting to do. Then I do have the payables for March. For general fund, $1,256,399.79. Road and bridge, $364,229.83. Public health, $198,757.45. Capital fund, $53,810.53. Administration, $3,008.88. Landfill fund, $142,314.48. Check register total, $2,018,520.96. Social services, $1,501,319.59, with a total of $3,519,840.55.
I move to accept the payables for March 2024 for Montezuma County in the amount of $3,519,840.55.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to accept the payables for March for Montezuma County in the amount of $3,519,840.55. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, is that it, Travis?
Yes.
All right, Commissioner Lindsay.
Yes, I'll try and keep this short. I did attend an energy and environment symposium up in Rifle this last week. A lot of good speakers, a lot of good information, and I'll bring that back to the board when I get all the stuff that they promised to send me. So, other than that, went out to the gun show. Was a really good crowd out there. Really fine job those people put it on. And also did go to the auction out at Yellow Jacket. And what a crowd. It was packed out there. And a few phone calls just to let people know that when you call us about planning and zoning issues that we're having public hearings on, we can't really say anything. I mean, and hopefully, I tell people I can't say anything. I can't prejudge these when it's coming in. And other than that, quite a few emails that have been forwarded to the clerk's office. And on a good note, wish to congratulate Commissioner Copenhaver and his bride on 50 years of marriage.
Wow, congratulations.
I was put up.
Yeah, I'm sure you were. I'm sure you were. Yeah, we had a wonderful celebration Saturday. Lots of people came out and had a nice steak dinner. It's very nice.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Other than that, this last week I went out to the gun show, spent a couple hours out there Friday evening. It's a good crowd. There's lots of activity. Whenever there's several events going on, like Kent said, out at Yellow Jacket and down here, it splits the people up a lot. I can't imagine if they weren't split up, there would have really been a crowd at different things. So I'm glad to see people getting out and going to all these things. It's good. It's good for people to do that. Other than that, like Kent said, just a few phone calls and lots of emails that we couldn't really discuss with people. So that's about all I got.
All right, very good. I spent my time traveling. I was at a Department of Fire Prevention and Control meeting in Sterling, Colorado for the state board that I sit on. A lot of conversation in that is still, again, around the hardening of homes, something that the legislators put into law, and something that I've said this before, and I really want to make it to where people understand it. It's not necessarily the wildfire that's driving these insurance companies out of the state of Colorado. The populace is in the Front Range, and because of the hail damage that they've had up there, That's specifically why these companies are leaving. So we're in a conundrum of, what do we do? How do we keep these insurance companies back? Because some people, when they're selling homes or buying homes, you have a mortgage, you have to have insurance. It's putting people into the conundrum of, one, can I find it? And two, can I afford it? So affordability, ability, and availability, it's a big issue around the state. And it's not all specifically just to wildfire. However, mitigation around your homes is also one of the quickest and easiest things to do, and everybody can do that to ensure that their homes are resistant. I did go to the Dolores meeting last night. They did say goodbye to a couple members, and then they seated their new members. Val Trulson, I think, if I remember this right, has been there, I want to say 30, I don't know. It was a long time. I couldn't believe it. But kudos to Val Trulson for the efforts that he's put into that community and Dolores, and go enjoy your retirement. I think you've earned it. So that new board will be taking over. Well, they did take over last night. They were all seated. So they have the same mayor. He was reelected, and then 2 new trustees. And with that, that is all that I have.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn this April 23rd, 2024 meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.